Imagine, if you will, a time where the boundaries between the known and the unknown blurred into a tapestry of tales so vivid they could make your heart skip a beat. Welcome, dear listener, to the hauntingly beautiful realm of medieval folklore, where every shadow whispers secrets and every tale is steeped in the rich, dark brew of ancient superstitions. As you settle in, perhaps with the warmth of a blanket or the soft glow of a lamp, we are curious, from which corner of our modern world do you join us? Is it dusk, where you are, or perhaps the deep quiet of midnight? Share with us in the comments below a simple hello, a note of where you are, and let us know if these tales soothe you into slumber or stir your imagination. Let us now tread softly into the peculiar and often unsettling landscape of the Middle Ages, a period where science was but a nascent seed and reason often bowed to the mystic. To us, in our age of enlightenment, these tales might seem quaint relics of a time less enlightened. Yet for those living through the medieval times, these were not mere stories, but living, breathing entities as real as the fear that gripped their hearts. In an era shadowed by war, ravaged by disease, and torn by religious fervor, folklore was the mirror reflecting the soul of the time. It was through these narratives whispered by the hearth or inked on aging parchment that people sought to understand the chaos, to give shape to the formless dread that haunted their lives. Dragons with scales glinting in the firelight, demons lurking in the corners, witches brewing potions, werewolves prowling under the full moon, and fairies with their capricious whims. Each creature was not just a figment of imagination, but a vessel for human fears, desires, and social critiques. What did these stories say about the people who told them? What shadows of humanity do they cast upon the canvas of history? As we delve deeper into this eerie dreamscape, we uncover not just the monsters that haunted their nights, but also the very human emotions that stirred beneath the surface, the terror of the unknown, the quest for meaning in a world of uncertainty, and the subtle commentary on the society they dared not confront directly. Oh, the enigmatic, shadowy recesses of the medieval mind. Here within this Serene series, we shall meet some of the most captivating figures, human and otherworldly alike, that wove the intricate tapestry of medieval folklore. Through their tales, we will unravel the rich, enlightening threads of superstition that once prevailed. And all this whispered in the same soothing tones to lull you into a tranquil slumber. As we step into the haunted realms of the past, let us first lay the groundwork by delving into the very origins of medieval folklore. Picture it as a patchwork quilt, each square a blend of history and myth, drawing on threads that stretch back to antiquity. Before the Middle Ages, pagan beliefs and superstitions reigned supreme across Europe. Stories of capricious gods, whimsical nature spirits, and terrifying monsters were not just tales, they were the very essence of pre-Christian cultures. The Vikings, with their robust sagas, spoke of trolls and giants in awe and fear. Germanic tribes wove dark, foreboding yarns of creatures that could shift shapes at will. Meanwhile, Celtic legends teemed with fairies, both benevolent and malevolent. As Christianity spread its wings, it did not obliterate these ancient traditions, but rather embraced them, transforming many pagan elements into new theological narratives. The old gods were reimagined as saints or demons. Magical beings became either instruments of divine will or tools of temptation. Miracles and wonders found their place in Christian hagiographies and chronicles. Yet this melding was not uniform. Across the diverse medieval landscapes, folklore adapted, taking on unique regional flavors. In the misty isles of Britain and Ireland, Celtic myths of the Fae folk thrived with undiminished vigor. The dense, dark forests of Central and Eastern Europe gave birth to chilling tales of vampires and witches. And in the long, harsh winters of Scandinavia, stories of Draugr and frost giants were born, chilling the hearts of all who heard them. Thus, even as the Church endeavored to unify Christian culture, this vibrant mosaic of regional lore painted medieval Europe with a palette of enchanting diversity. How did these stories, these whispers of the past, shape the minds and hearts of those who lived in such times? Let us explore with open hearts and curious minds the legacy left by these ancient tales. Within the vibrant palette of folklore, where the universal intertwines with the local, the ancient with the modern, and the sacred dances, with the profane emerged the legendary creatures that captured the medieval imagination. Among these dragons stood out monstrous serpentine and cloaked in fire, these scaly giants were the epitome of primal fear. Imagine the terror as they swooped down on unsuspecting villages and monasteries, their fiery breath scorching the earth, their hunger insatiable for both livestock and the fairest of maidens. Only the most valiant of knights dared to face these infernal beasts, their quests often aided by divine providence. A striking testament to this valor is found in the 11th century Ramsen carving in Sweden, which brings to life a scene from Norse mythology. Here, the hero Sigurd, with unyielding courage, drives his sword deep into the underbelly of the monstrous Fafnir. This act, more than mere conquest, symbolizes the eternal struggle of good against the beastly essence of evil. Yet dragons were not merely adversaries to be vanquished. They represented something far greater, the raw elemental forces of nature, guardians of vast treasures and profound secrets. To challenge a dragon was to confront the wild, untamable parts of both the world and oneself. In defeating the external beast, the hero also quelled the inner turmoil, a duality vividly portrayed in the legend of St. George. St. George, once a Roman soldier turned Christian martyr, became a beacon of hope when he saved a Libyan city from a dragon that brought plague. His victory was not just over the creature, but over the spiritual malaise afflicting the community. By converting the populace with his act of bravery, he showcased the triumph of faith both over the external beast and the internal demons. His story, spreading like wildfire across medieval Europe, established him as the patron saint of England and beyond. In art and architecture, the slaying of the dragon became a powerful symbol, a vivid reminder of Christianity's promise through faith one can overcome the darkest forces both without and within. In the medieval mind, the conquest over ancient traditions was just one battle won in a war against the unknown. But dragons, those fierce and fiery embodiments of chaos, were not the only terrors that plagued the medieval imagination. Beyond the borders of their maps in the shadowy realms where the world was said to end, other equally fearsome creatures were believed to reside, and none struck fear into the hearts of seafarers more than the leviathans of the deep. For those brave souls who ventured into the vast, untamed ocean, the sea was not merely a passage, but a domain of primeval danger. The fierce storms, the mysterious, uncharted shores, and the ever-looming threat of pirates were daunting enough. Yet within the swirling mists and the abyssal depths, even more terrifying adversaries were thought to lurk. Imagine, if you will, the horror of encountering gargantuan sea serpents, whales with jaws wide enough to engulf entire ships, and creatures with tentacles as numerous as they were terrifying. Among these nightmarish denizens, the kraken stood out, a colossal cephalopod, a creature so monstrous it was rumored to pull entire vessels and their unfortunate crews into the watery grave. Described with a head disturbingly human-like, it was as if the ocean itself had birthed a dark parody of man, a sea monk or bishop, symbolizing the chaotic alien nature of the deep as a realm of divine errors. Then there were tales of the half-goofer, a titanic beast capable of masquerading as an island. Sailors seeking refuge would anchor upon what they believed to be land, only to be plunged into the depths when this monstrous trickster decided to submerge. Here the boundary between the natural and the monstrous blurred, turning the familiar into the terrifyingly alien. As medieval navigation techniques evolved, opening up new trade routes and distant horizons, the legends of these sea monsters did not fade, but rather grew in potency. They voiced the inherent dangers of the unexplored, the humility of humanity against the grandeur of creation. To sail beyond the sight of land was to step into a liminal space in a realm where the rules of the known world did not apply, where the sea itself seemed to mock the very notion of order. Indeed, this theme of a world turned upside down where monsters ruled the waves was a recurring echo in the medieval psyche, a reminder of the vast, untamable wildness that lay beyond the edge of their world. In the tapestry of medieval folklore, a chilling, dreamlike logic prevailed. where the boundaries between the realms of life and death, humanity, and beasts, the natural and the supernatural, became indistinct. Among these shadowy figures, none epitomized this eerie liminality more than the revenant. These were not mere specters or fleeting ghosts, but the unquiet dead animated by demonic forces or a relentless will that refused to fade. Imagine the horrors as these undead creatures, their bodies grotesquely swollen, yet impervious to decay, clawed their way out of their graves. The 12th century English chronicler William of Newburgh captured several spine-chilling encounters with these malevolent beings. In one haunting narrative, a once devout villager, now a monstrous ghoul, emerged from the earth. His nocturnal forays unleashed a plague of fear and disease upon the village. How terrifying it must have been to witness the once familiar face twisted into something unrecognizable, spreading dread with every step. Only through the desperate act of exhuming his body and burning his heart could the villagers end this macabre visitation. These tales not only painted a vivid picture of medieval anxieties about death, but also reflected an era where life was fleeting and the specter of mortality was an ever-present companion. Church teachings promised immediate judgment upon death, with the soul's fate sealed for eternity in bliss or torment. Yet folklore wove a darker, more complex narrative, suggesting that the line between life and death was not as definitive as the clergy would have one believe. Was it possible that the corrupting stain of sin could animate flesh even after burial? This grim fascination with the afterlife gone awry even seeped into medieval law. In certain regions of Europe, suspected revenants faced posthumous trials, their culpability assessed through ordeals. A guilty verdict often led to gruesome ends for the corpse, staking, beheading, or cremation. The moral lessons within these stories were stark. Revenants were always those who had sinned grievously in life. The gluttonous, the avaricious, those who had transgressed against the moral code found their earthly transgressions haunting them beyond death. Thus, the medieval mind grappled with the profound, often terrifying implications of mortality and morality, where even the grave could not contain the consequences of one's earthly deeds. In death, their malevolence was not merely symbolic, but became a grotesque embodiment of their sins. An abhorrent testament to the grim rewards of immorality. Yet as the church endeavored to harness these disturbing legends for moral instruction, the tales retained their capacity to unsettle and provoke fear. They struck at the very core of human dread, death, decay, and the eerie unknown. Even the promise of divine salvation could not fully dispel these shadows. These chilling reverberations of ancient pagan lore and superstition permeated the writings of many medieval scribes and thinkers. However, none embraced the macabre with such zeal as Gervase of Tilbury. Born around 1150 in the quaint English village of Tilbury, Gervase was not only a cleric and scholar, but also a traveler, serving in the courts of several European monarchs. Yet it is for his Otia Imperialia, or Recreation for an Emperor, that he is most remembered today. This extensive collection, penned around 1215 and dedicated to Holy Roman Emperor Otto IV, is a testament to the medieval imagination's boundless expanse. Through 3 volumes, Gervase presents a whirlwind of fantastical accounts and pseudo-scientific musings, all delivered with a sincerity that is both endearing and unnerving. In one striking passage, Gervase describes a secretive race of diminutive, swarthy men who surface from the earth each summer to trade with the people of Herefordshire. These secret people, as he names them, retreat beneath the soil when winter approaches, leaving behind only the faintest traces of their existence. Another tale recounts the capture of a monstrous creature, part man, part lion, in England's dense forests, which was then gifted to King Henry II. This beast, Gervase claims, was as tame as a lamb and soon adapted to dining at the royal table. But not all his stories are of wonder. Some delve into the darker recesses of human experience. Within the shadowy tapestry of medieval lore, Gervase weaves a narrative rich with the malevolent whims of demons, fairies, and spectral entities. He speaks of infants, snatched from the warmth of their cradles by envious fae of weary travelers, misguided by the deceptive light of will-o'-the-wisps, and of devout monks ensnared by the allure of succubi in the dead of night. Among these tales, one stands out with a shiver of horror, a noble lady of Aria beguiled by a demon cloaked in the charm of a gallant knight. Only after she bore his monstrous child did she grasp the true essence of her lover. With chilling detachment, the demon confesses that had she not uncovered his secret, he would have lingered by her side until her last breath. Chavez does not present these stories as mere fabrications, but insists they are grounded in the testimonies of eyewitnesses and credible sources. For him, the realm of folklore was not an escapist fantasy, but a vivid extension of the natural world. Demons and monsters were as tangible as donkeys and millstones, as real as the earth beneath one's feet. This earnest belief was not unusual among medieval scholars, who, in a time where science and mystery intertwined, where the church whispered of invisible forces influencing human events, could lend credence to the uncanny. Yet even in his era, Chavez's Otia is exceptional for its expansive catalog of peculiar convictions. It is a manuscript that captures the medieval psyche in its full spectrum of wonder and dread, its enthrallment with the bizarre and the grotesque. Here was a man, Chavez, standing at the crossroads of two epochs. As both cleric and courtier, he was immersed in the erudition and refinement of the High Middle Ages. Yet his work is imbued with the echoes of an older, darker world, a pagan cosmos teeming with capricious spirits and chthonic horrors. This juxtaposition of Christian orthodoxy with pagan superstition vividly illustrates the internal conflict within Chavez's narrative, showcasing a mind torn between the light of reason and the shadows of ancient beliefs. In the mystical world of medieval tales, fairies are not the enchanting and harmless creatures often depicted in modern times. Instead, they are formidable and treacherous beings lurking in the shadows with a sinister intent. These entities, as seen through the eyes of medieval scholars, like those chronicled in the Otia Imperialia, pose a grave peril to the unsuspecting wayfarer or the innocent child yet to be baptized. With their haunting melodies and beguiling visions, they draw men into the abyss of doom. They are known to swap healthy human babies with frail, malevolent changelings and whisk away young maidens to serve in their ethereal courts as midwives. Consider the tale of a Carthusian monk who, wandering through the dense woods, stumbles upon a feast hosted by these enigmatic beings. Enchanted by the lavish display, he dares to take a silver goblet as a token of his encounter. Yet upon returning to his monastic sanctuary, he finds the goblet transformed into mere dust, a stark emblem of the fleeting allure of fairy magic. In another heart-wrenching story, a young man entranced by the beauty of a fairy follows her into a mountain. For what he believes to be 3 days, he revels in her hospitality and her embrace. However, upon emerging, he discovers that centuries have elapsed in the human realm. His loved ones are but memories, and he too soon succumbs to the dust of time. These narratives encapsulate the medieval duality towards fairies, creatures of allure, possessing knowledge and powers beyond the grasp of mere mortals, yet inherently untrustworthy, their whims as capricious as they are cruel. This perilous duality reaches its zenith in the archetype of the fairy mistress, a figure of seductive charm who ultimately leads her human lover to ruin or abandonment. In the lays of Marie de France, the Knight L'Enval, blessed with the affection of a radiant fairy, loses her forever when he violates his vow of silence. What lessons do these tales whisper to us through the ages? They serve as somber reminders of the Church's teachings on the perils of straying from the path of righteousness, highlighting the eternal struggle between allure and virtue. In the realm of spiritual vigilance, the dangers of temptation were ever present, as vividly illustrated by the figures of fairies, those beguiling yet perilous entities that, akin to demons, were considered agents of the devil. These creatures, with their promises of ephemeral joys and false hopes, were believed to lead the devout astray from the righteous path. Yet there was a curious duality in the fascination they inspired. Clergy might decry the perils of these otherworldly beings, but even they could not help but be captivated by the allure of the fairy folk. In a society tightly woven with the threads of religious dogma and rigid social strata, fairies symbolized a return to a more untamed primal existence. They were the embodiment of freedom, a whisper of the wild amidst the structured and the known. This complex interplay of attraction and fear, of enchantment and dread, permeates the pages of Gervais's Ostia Imperialia and resonates through the tapestry of medieval folklore. Here the marvelous and the monstrous are but two faces of the same coin, with the boundary between reality and fantasy perpetually in flux. Gervais's work stands as a poignant emblem of the medieval psyche, a mosaic of faith intertwined with superstition, of beauty juxtaposed with the grotesque. It conjures a world where celestial beings and infernal spirits mingle with humanity, where the natural and the supernatural intertwine in ways that disturb and enthrall. This unsettling yet intoxicating blend of the rational and the irrational, of science and myth, continues to captivate us. Though the creatures of medieval lore may not prowl our streets, they still dwell in the shadowy corners of our collective consciousness. As we venture further into the eerie landscapes of medieval folklore, let us embrace Gervais's curious spirit. Let us approach these ancient narratives with a blend of skepticism and awe, reason, and imagination. For indeed, the external monsters often reflect the internal ones, offering profound insights into the human condition. As we leave behind the echoes of past tales, let us now delve deeper into the shadows of medieval thought, where the fabric of life was woven with threads of mystery and the unknown. In our forthcoming narrative, you'll meet a different breed of medieval storyteller, one who wielded folklore not just as a means of entertainment, but as a sharp instrument of satire and social critique. Until then, may your slumbers be filled with gentle dreams. In those times when the natural world was an enigma and fate seemed an unsolvable puzzle, folklore emerged as a beacon of understanding. It was the balm for a world where death, that relentless specter, lurked at every corner, claiming lives with an indiscriminate hand. Oh, the weight of mortality upon the medieval psyche. From this preoccupation with the end, a chilling yet captivating motif was born: the dance of death, or danse macabre, as it was known. This allegory, which captured the hearts and minds of the late Middle Ages, painted a stark picture of death's universal claim. In Art Death, often a skeleton with a ghastly grin would lead a parade of humanity kings, rubbing shoulders with paupers, prelates, with prostitutes, the young with the aged, in a somber, spectral dance toward the grave. These tableaux, with their macabre beauty, whispered a poignant reminder of life's ephemeral nature and the vanity of earthly pursuits against the backdrop of our inevitable end. The Dance of Death reached its zenith in the 15th century, a time when Europe was battered by the relentless waves of plague and warfare. In this era, where death was as familiar as the air they breathed, these grim depictions might have offered a peculiar solace. They served to remind all, from the mightiest to the meekest, that no one could outrun the relentless march of time and fate. In the woodcut prints of the German artist Hans Holbein, the younger, created in the 1520s, one encounters striking, almost satirical depictions of the Dance of Death. These intricate illustrations capture death intruding upon the lives of individuals from every echelon of society, offering a mordant critique on the futility of earthly pursuits. Imagine the scene where death, with a ghastly grin, seizes a corpulent abbot, pulling him into the macabre dance as the man desperately clutches his rosary, his prayers now futile. Or consider the knight armored and defiant, yet his sword is powerless against death's relentless grip, a stark reminder of the boundaries of human power. Kings, paupers, lovers, and merchants alike become unwitting partners in Holbein's grim ballet. The Dance of Death was far more than a mere cultural trope. It was a vessel for profound social and religious commentary. By portraying death as the ultimate equalizer, it underscored the Church's teachings on the necessity of a virtuous life and the rejection of material temptations. This imagery also voiced the deep-seated fears and the overwhelming sense of vulnerability that gripped medieval society amidst the relentless scourges of famine, plague, and warfare. As the medieval era transitioned into the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, the dance of death did not fade into obscurity, but rather intensified its grip on the European psyche. Its chilling imagery permeates through the ages, from the eerie skeletons adorning Baroque tomb sculptures to the dark, fantastical settings of the Romantic period. Indeed, the dance macabre's unsettling symbolism foreshadowed the birth of the modern Gothic horror genre in the 18th century. In the mist-shrouded graveyards and decaying castles penned by writers like Horace Walpole and Anne Radcliffe, we find reverberations of medieval death obsession, a chilling exploration of our most primal fears. What else is Gothic fiction, if not a journey through the shadows of our deepest anxieties? Can you imagine the medieval mind, gripped by a terror of the grave, a dread of the unknown, and an uneasy sense that the boundary between the living and the dead is far more permeable than we dare to admit? From the vampires and revenants of folklore to the ghosts and ghouls haunting Gothic tales, the macabre preoccupations of medieval folklore continue to echo through time. Even in our era of scientific enlightenment, remnants of these ancient superstitions persist emerging in the ghostly tales whispered around campfires and the zombies and vampires that populate our screens. Is there not something within the human psyche that perpetually draws us to the dark, the macabre, the things that stir in the shadows? Medieval folklore, as we've explored, forms a rich tapestry interwoven with threads of pagan superstitions, Christian beliefs, in the timeless fears and fantasies that haunt human imagination. From fairies and monsters to witches and walking corpses, the medieval world was teeming with eerie tales and unsettling entities. Yet for all their otherworldly horror, these stories offer profound insights into the lived experiences and mental landscapes of those who spun them. In an age where life hung by a thread and death lurked around every corner, folklore served as a beacon, helping people navigate the chaos to impose some semblance of meaning and order upon the vast unknown. The medieval mind, with its ready acceptance of the supernatural and its fascination with death and the grotesque, might seem foreign and unsettling to us. But are our fears and fantasies truly so different? After all, do we not still weave narratives to shield ourselves from the darkness, to chart a course through the uncharted? Can we truly fathom the untamed depths of our own minds? From the dance of shadows cast by medieval firesides to the eerie, luminous glow of modern movie screens, folklore's power to both unsettle and enchant us remains undiminished. As long as fear and wonder pulse within the human heart, these ancient tales will persist, weaving their magic, beckoning us to gaze into the dark, reflective pools of our imagination. As we near the end of our journey through the tapestry of medieval folklore, we emerge with a profound appreciation for story's ability to illuminate the very essence of humanity, to shape our deepest fears and most fervent desires into tangible forms. Perhaps the true revelation from these unsettling narratives is that the monsters we conjure in our minds reveal more about our inner selves than they do about the external world. They are but mirrors reflecting the bizarre and wondrous machinations of the human psyche, with all its shadows and its brilliance. The next time a ghost story sends chills down your spine, or a sudden noise in the night makes you leap, remember you are part of a timeless tradition that reaches back through the centuries to the haunted forests and mist-shrouded castles of medieval lore. And who can say, perhaps in the distant future, our own fears and fantasies will become the legends, the folklore of an age yet to come, just as strange and disturbing as those that once haunted the dreams of our medieval ancestors. For ultimately, the potency of folklore does not reside in the veracity of its tales, but in its capacity to echo the most primal, profound stirrings of our hearts. It is a mirror held up to our souls, revealing the wonders and the horrors that dwell within, a testament to the enduring, mysterious dance of human emotion and imagination. Ah, the dance of shadows and light, how it plays upon the minds of those who dare to dream. For as long as there are stories to weave and imaginations to craft them, that mirror of folklore will never cease to captivate and unsettle us. So, dear listener, let us embrace the darkness, for it is in the night that the tales of yore whisper their secrets into our very souls. Remember, in the eternal tapestry of folklore, the lines between the tangible and the fantastical, the living and the departed, are but a wavering, elusive shadow. Oh, the medieval times, a period so rich with tales of malevolent beings, where fairies and impish sprites reveled in the torment of unsuspecting humans. Yet amidst these mischievous entities, one figure loomed larger in the collective dread of the age, the werewolf. Since time immemorial, whispers of men morphing into wolves have echoed through the ages, but in the heart of the Middle Ages, this fear swelled to a crescendo. It was believed that one could become this beast through dark magic, a malevolent curse, or by donning a wolfskin belt. Once transformed, the werewolf was overtaken by primal urges, compelled to prowl the woods preying upon livestock, and at times even human flesh. Consider Peter Stump, a 16th century German farmer whose name became synonymous with terror. Under the cruel grip of torture, he confessed to years of black magic, claiming to have morphed into a monstrous wolf. In this savage guise, he admitted to the slaughter and consumption of 14 children, 2 pregnant women, and a myriad of animals. While his confession was drawn out through unspeakable means, it mirrors the genuine dread that werewolves instilled in the medieval psyche. Yet werewolves were not the sole denizens of the untamed wilds. Folktales also spoke of the wadwo, or wild man, a hairy club-wielding figure lurking in the depths of the forest. Sometimes portrayed as a noble savage, imbued with a primal, untainted wisdom, the wild man often symbolized the untamed aspects of nature itself, a force both feared and revered in equal measure. Within the medieval mind, there lay a deep-seated dread of the untamed, the ungodly wilderness, where nature bared its fangs in tooth and claw. The wild man, a figure shrouded in the mists of folklore, perhaps encapsulated the medieval civilization's fragile grip on order, a whisper of how swiftly a man could descend back into primal instincts when severed from society's embrace. Across the tapestries of medieval art and literature, the stark contrast between civilization's light and the chaotic, untamed darkness of the wilderness was ever present, a dichotomy that figures like the wild man and the werewolf threatened to dismantle with their very existence. These creatures with their beastly forms served as liminal beings balancing precariously on the edge between humanity and animality, between the structured world of civilization and the wild, lawless expanse of nature. They were the embodiment of the terror that lay beneath the skin of every human, the fear that at any moment one could shed their humanity and embrace monstrosity. How intriguing it is to trace these medieval fears through the corridors of time, seeing them echo in the Gothic narratives and horror tales that would later grip the imagination. The werewolf with its eerie howls would prowl the pages of penny dreadfuls, while the unsettling idea of civilized men going native, reverting to a state of savagery, was a theme authors like Joseph Conrad would delve into with haunting precision. Even the seemingly benign archetype of the wild man can be seen as a precursor to the modern-day cryptids, like Bigfoot, still stirring the collective imagination. Thus, while tales of werewolves and wild men might strike us as fantastical today, for the medieval soul, these creatures were very much part of their world, lurking at the fringes of civilization, a constant reminder of the wildness that could surge forth, overwhelming the delicate veneer of order. Yet the terror of the monstrous did not end with creatures of the wild. No, the medieval psyche was equally haunted by the witch, the dark sorcerer, who in league with devils cast curses and wrought havoc upon the innocent. It is to this chilling preoccupation with witchcraft that we now turn, for throughout the Middle Ages, the belief in magic and its malevolent practitioners was as pervasive as the shadows at dusk. While the church castigated sorcery as a sinister art, ordinary people often turned to charm spells and potions for safeguarding or steering their destinies. Over time, the image of the diabolical witch who secured malevolent powers through a pact with Satan became not just feared, but utterly despised. In the waning years of the Middle Ages, a veritable frenzy over witchcraft erupted, with the craft blamed for everything from crop failure to the souring of milk to the impotence of men. Accusations soared through the air like wildfire, and the mere whisper of sorcery could turn lifelong neighbors into bitter adversaries. Inquisitors and magistrates, driven by zeal, devised intricate methods to unearth the guilt of suspected witches, often resorting to barbarous techniques. One infamous test was the ordeal by water. Here the accused witch, stripped bare and bound, was hurled into a lake or river. If she sank to the depths, her innocence was proclaimed, though often too late. But should she float as an unnatural witch, supposedly her guilt was declared, and she was swiftly put to death. Another ghastly method involved pricking the witch's skin to find the devil's mark, an area insensible to pain, where Satan's claw had allegedly touched her. Of course, these trials were rigged from the outset, leaving no room for true justice. Perhaps the most potent catalyst in this era of witch-hunting hysteria was the 1487 treatise Malleus Maleficarum, or the Hammer of Witches. This lurid manual, penned by the German clergyman Heinrich Kramer, was replete with tales of witches' malevolent deeds gathered through torture and hearsay. It painted witchcraft as a vast, malevolent conspiracy against Christendom, demanding ruthless eradication. Kramer depicted witches as depraved women consumed by perverse lust, who engaged in unspeakable acts with the devil and his demons at debauched Sabbaths. These sorceresses were accused of blighting crops, cursing foes, corrupting priests, and even murdering infants. They were the ultimate folk devils of the early modern era. Malleus Maleficarum became the witch hunters' Bible-igniting persecutions that would rage across the centuries. Could there be a more poignant reminder of the darkness that fear and superstition can cast over the human soul? The chilling echoes of bygone centuries, where the mere whisper of witchcraft could ignite a storm of terror and persecution, claiming countless lives, predominantly those of women, in its dark wake. How can we in our enlightened times truly grasp the sheer dread and paranoia that the mere notion of witchcraft conjured in the minds of the medieval populace? In an era riddled with famines, plagues, and endless misfortunes, witches became the scapegoats, the sinister agents of Satan, weaving threads of chaos and destruction through the fabric of society. And alas, it was women who often found themselves at the cruel intersection of fear and suspicion. While we might now dismiss medieval witch trials as relics of a superstitious past, the haunting refrain of witch hunt still echoes in our vocabulary, symbolizing any ruthless, unfounded pursuit, especially against the defenseless. Isn't it a somber reflection that the dark shadows of medieval witchcraft still stretch into our modern world, casting their pall over tales of satanic conspiracies and secret societies? As we delve into the unsettling realm of medieval folklore, we must ponder, how close are these ancient fears to our contemporary consciousness? The specters may have changed, but human nature, with its penchant for conjuring up specters of evil, remains eerily constant. One of the most spine-chilling aspects of medieval law was its preoccupation with the supernatural ghost revenants and the restless dead. In a time where death was as common as the next breath, stories of the departed returning to haunt the living were not mere tales but grim realities. Death in medieval eyes was not merely an end, but a grim, macabre journey vividly illustrated in the Dance of Death, a procession where the living were led by the skeletal hands of death itself to their inevitable demise. These stark reminders of mortality, these danses macabres, serve not only as a memento mori, but as a chilling allegory of life's fleeting nature. The inevitability of death, a universal truth, casts a shadow over the transient allure of worldly possessions and pleasures. Yet beyond the symbolic skeletons, the medieval tapestry was woven with tales of real flesh and blood ghosts and revenants that roamed among the living. Imagine the terror that gripped the hearts of those who believed that souls unshriven of their sins or victims of violent demises were condemned to wander the earth as tormented spirits. Murderers, heretics, excommunicants, each a likely candidate to return as a vengeful apparition. Consider the 12th century English clergyman, William of Newburgh, who documented chilling accounts of sinful clerics and corrupt nobles. These once respected figures rose from their graves not in peace, but as grotesque bloated monstrosities, spreading pestilence and terrorizing the populace. In one harrowing narrative, villagers driven by desperation unearthed the corpse of a suspected revenant, its heart still beating with unholy life. They burned it a grim ritual to banish the undead scourge. These macabre stories of the restless dead echo eerily in the later vampire lore. Indeed, the medieval revenant can be viewed as the dark progenitor to the blood-draining creatures of Gothic fiction. But for the people of the Middle Ages, these were not just tales to send shivers down the spine on a dark night. They were very real threats lurking just beyond the veil of life and death. To combat these spectral perils, numerous funerary practices emerged. Graves were weighted with heavy stones. Bodies were interred face down and suspected revenants were staked through the heart. Amulets and charms like garlic iron nails or holy water were deployed in hopes of keeping the dead in their eternal slumber. This grim folklore reflects a profound medieval dread of death and decay, a time when the boundary between the living and the dead seemed perilously thin. In an era where death was an ever-present specter, is it any surprise that ghosts and ghouls held such sway over the medieval mind? Even now, tales of hauntings and undead horrors continue to unsettle us, tapping into our primal fears. While we might smile at these ancient beliefs, do they not still resonate with us, reminding us of our own mortality and the mysteries that lie beyond? Though we may not cling to the superstitions of our medieval forebears, the dread of death and the enigma of the afterlife still stirs profoundly within the human soul. We engage with our own mortality through chilling ghost stories and spine-tingling tales of the undead, wrestling with the profound mysteries that await each of us at the end of life's journey. As we near the conclusion of our exploration into the shadowy lore of medieval Europe, it's poignant to pause and consider the timeless appeal of these haunting legends. Across the centuries, the folklore of the Middle Ages continues to enchant us with its visceral primal force. Perhaps these dark tales resonate because they touch upon something elemental in the human experience. The eternal fears of darkness, the unknown, and the monstrous, both within and around us. By confronting these fears through myth and legend, our medieval ancestors endeavored to find some semblance of meaning and order in a world fraught with peril and mystery. While the dragons, wild men, witches, and revenants of medieval lore might strike us now as fantastical, they have profoundly influenced the motifs that persist in horror and Gothic literature. Without the monstrous archetype of the werewolf, we might never have explored the duality of human nature, as in tales like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Without the seductive evil embodied by the witch characters like Dracula, icons of malevolence would not captivate our imagination so thoroughly. Thus, when we immerse ourselves in contemporary horror, whether through the pages of a Stephen King novel or the screen of a spine-chilling Netflix series, we are in essence partaking in an ancient tradition of storytelling. We echo the whispers of those fearful souls gathered around the medieval hearth, sharing tales of the uncanny, the undead, and the unsettling. For while the settings may change, the human need to grapple with the shadows, to give form to our fears, remains undimmed through the ages. Though the world has evolved with its dazzling array of technologies, our medieval ancestors would find the core of our human heart startlingly familiar, a repository of the same midnight dreads and macabre visions. We remain at our essence, those anxious creatures, hairless apes, leaping at shadows, crafting elaborate myths to fend off the abyss. What then can we glean from this somber exploration of medieval folklore? Perhaps it's the profound lesson of stories' enduring power to captivate, to unsettle, and most crucially, to knit us together, united in our primal fears and desires. Even as tales morph through retellings, that eerie thrill, that shiver of recognition reverberates through time, as timeless as it is terrifying. As the Black Death ravaged the land, it not only amplified fears of the supernatural, but also intensified existing superstitions. The medieval psyche, steeped in legends of vampires, revenants, and witchcraft, saw this catastrophic plague as divine retribution or the sinister machinations of malevolent spirits. Villages obliterated by the disease were whispered to be cursed, while those who inexplicably survived often faced accusations of dark pacts. In this atmosphere of pervasive dread, the allegory of the danse macabre, or the dance of death, surged to the forefront. This motif, which took root in the late 13th century, powerfully illustrated death's indiscriminate claim, portraying skeletal figures ushering individuals from every stratum of society into a somber parade toward the grave. Kings alongside paupers, knights with clergymen, the young and the aged, none could evade death's summons. One of the earliest visual interpretations of this chilling spectacle adorned the cloisters of the Cemetery of the Holy Innocents in Paris, painted in the wake of the Black Death in the late 1420s. Though much has been lost to time, the fragments that survive whisper to us still. The walls of churches and the pages of manuscripts bore witness to a hauntingly vivid spectacle, the Dance of Death, a motif that emerged starkly across Europe. This eerie yet darkly humorous mural depicted an array of figures from all walks of life, each entwined with a macabre partner and animated corpse. Imagine the scene, a chilling dance, where death itself becomes the companion, a grim reminder of life's fleeting essence. In the 1520s, the German artist Hans Holbein, the Younger, took this theme to new heights with a series of woodcuts. With meticulous detail and a sharp social critique, Holbein's work illustrated death infiltrating every corner of human existence. From the mundane to the monumental, death rudely interrupted the living, a stark portrayal of life's fragility. While the Black Death undoubtedly fueled this macabre fascination, the Dance of Death also tapped into a broader medieval obsession with mortality. Plagues, the 100 Years' War, and rampant famines made death not just an eventuality, but a constant companion. In such a world where existence was often harsh and short, the Dance of Death served as a bold confrontation with mortality, a dark jest at the Grim Reaper's expense. Yet this motif was more than mere morbidity. It carried a moral imperative urging the living to lead virtuous lives in preparation for Judgment Day. Skeletons in these depictions often wielded mirrors, hourglasses, or shovels, symbols of vanity's folly and time's relentless march. Preachers seizing upon this powerful allegory warned against worldly attachments, transforming church walls and cemeteries into canvases for these ghastly memento mori. But within this dance of death, there lay a subtle message of equality. By presenting death as the great leveler, the motif gently critiqued the rigid social hierarchies of the time. Here in the shadow of death, all were equal, a poignant reminder that in the end, status and wealth mean nothing. Could there be a more profound statement on the human condition? The peasantry might have found a dark joy in witnessing death's harsh embrace, claimed the lofty bishops and barons, a reminder that the mighty could tumble just as far as the humble and downtrodden. The allure of the danse macabre might have faded over the centuries, but its chilling imagery etched itself deeply into the European consciousness. You can still trace its echoes in the skeletal figures on Elizabethan memento mori rings, in the eerie phantasmagoria of Victorian Gothic tales, and in the bony characters of contemporary films like The Seventh Seal and Coco. Even in our modern parlance, when we speak of death and taxes, or with a cynical nod to the graveyard as the great equalizer, we are channeling that medieval gallows humor that faces life's one undeniable truth. The Dance of Death, born from the particular dreads of the medieval era, struck a chord with deeper human anxieties and fascinations. The unnerving thought that death could snatch anyone at any moment. The strange catharsis in confronting this reality through dark humor. The belief that the manner in which one meets their end holds greater significance than any worldly rank. These are sentiments that continue to reverberate through the ages. Just as medieval men and women found a grim solace in the danse macabre, we too might find a reflection of our shared destiny in its macabre, grinning parade. Yet the influence of medieval folklore stretches far beyond the Dance of Death. The eerie stories and superstitions of those times, they might seem foreign to us now, have laid the groundwork for many enduring elements of popular culture. From the bloodthirsty vampires and shape-shifting werewolves of Gothic literature to the enchanting witches and whimsical fairies of today's fantasy, the archetypes born in medieval lore continue to haunt our collective imagination. Take, for instance, the vampire, that immortal creature. As the cloak of darkness envelops the world, a chilling figure emerges, one who thrives on the very essence of life, the blood of the living. Though the word vampire didn't resonate in the annals of history until the 18th century, the terrifying concept of malevolent spirits preying upon humanity stretches back to the dawn of civilization. Oh, how these ancient fears crystallized during the medieval era into what we now recognize as the literary vampire. Medieval chroniclers with quills trembling in their hands wrote of ghastly revenants, or narzera, the shambling, reanimated corpses that clawed their way out of graves to haunt and torment their once familiar villages. These undead were often blamed for the spread of plague, as if death itself had risen to continue its grim work among the living. To thwart their nightly hunts, villagers resorted to macabre rituals, driving stakes into the hearts of the deceased, or stuffing their mouths with bricks to silence their eternal hunger. These harrowing tales set the stage for the emergence of the first true literary vampires in the 18th century, epitomized by the chilling narrative in John Polidori's 1819 story, The Vampire. Subsequent Victorian authors like Sheridan Le Fanu and Bram Stoker enriched this mythos, drawing deeply from the well of Eastern European folklore itself, steeped in medieval origins. Despite the evolution of vampires in popular culture, from Anne Rice's brooding romantic Lestat to the luminous love-struck creatures of Twilight, they all echo the essence of their medieval ancestors: the undead revenant, the harbinger of plague, the seductive spoiler of souls. Yet not only vampires but werewolves too trace their lineage back to these shadowy times. While stories of humans morphing into beasts are woven into the fabric of many cultures, the distinct figure of the werewolf, a man cursed to transform into a ravening beast, under the full moon's glow was shaped by medieval folklore. Werewolves were seen as the embodiment of humanity's primal animalistic nature, and it released by dark occult forces. One of the earliest whispers of such a tale comes from the 12th century chronicler Gervase of Tilbury, who recounted the harrowing story of a nobleman. Deep within the shadowy embrace of an ancient forest, a weary traveler encounters a sight both wondrous and unsettling: a wolf whose eyes gleam not with hunger, but with a profound sadness. This wolf, in a voice as gentle as the rustling leaves, confesses his true nature. He is no ordinary beast, but a knight cursed to roam these woods in lupine form, his years of penance a testament to his past transgressions. This tale of sorrow and redemption echoes through time, foreshadowing the complex characters of later literary werewolves, like those found in Guy Endor's The Werewolf of Paris, or Universal's The Wolfman. Yet not all denizens of medieval lore receive such layered reinterpretations in our modern narratives. The wild men once feared as brutish savages who roamed the untamed forests have been transformed into the dim-witted ogres of fairy tales and fantasy. Dragons, once the epitome of satanic dread, now often represent elemental chaos or even nobility in their own right. But perhaps the most dramatic shift has been with the fairies of old, those capricious spirits of medieval lore who could as easily curse as bless. In the sweetened world of Disney and Victorian children's literature, these once formidable beings have been reduced to tiny, sparkly figures, more likely to engage in playful antics than to wield dark enchantments. It is only in the recent writings of authors like Susanna Clarke and Neil Gaiman that we see a return to the perilous essence of these medieval fairies, capturing their wild, untamed spirit that lurked beyond the safety of human civilization. But beyond the creatures themselves, the themes they embody continue to strike a chord within us. The medieval mind wrapped its fears of the unknown, the other, and the liminal in the guise of the monstrous and the uncanny. When tales of witches spoiling harvests or changelings replacing infants were spun, they were not just stories. They were attempts to make sense of the unpredictable cruelty of fate in a world where so much was left to the whims of chance. These narratives, rich with emotion and the human condition, remain as relevant today as they ever were, inviting us to ponder, what monsters do we fear in our modern forest? When our forebears filled the untamed wilderness with dragons and wood wozes, they were casting their deepest fears of the unknown and the uncivilized onto the canvas of nature. And as they murmured tales of revenants haunting plague-ravaged villages, they faced the relentless specter of death and ever-present terror in times of dire mortality. These fears, though they may now wear different guises, have not faded into obscurity. We, too, harbor trepidation towards the stranger, the unfamiliar, the unpredictable. We continue to weave narratives to interpret the inexplicable misfortunes that befall us, whether we cloak them in the guise of conspiracy theories or moral panics, rather than ancient hexes and curses. Deep within, we still tremble at the thought of what might dwell in the darkness of the primal chaos that could erupt and shatter our carefully constructed lives. This perhaps is the timeless allure and strength of medieval folklore. Despite its apparent oddity and superstition, it touches upon something profoundly and eternally human. Those eerie tales once shared by the glow of hearth fires on endless winter nights. Those unsettling figures carved into manuscript margins or the stone vaults of churches. They all articulate the ineffable fears and yearnings that have shadowed us since we first began to tell stories to seek understanding of our existence. So the next time you find yourself chilled by the insatiable thirst of a vampire, captivated by a witch's cryptic curse, or pondering a ghost's unresolved affairs, take a moment to reflect upon the medieval souls who first molded these enduring symbols. They existed in a world vastly different from ours, one drenched in superstition and fraught with unimaginable trials. Yet through their folklore, they painted a vivid, if macabre, picture of the human condition, a portrait that retains the power to disturb, enchant, and resonate with our own existential quests. As our journey through the shadowy and captivating realm of medieval folklore draws to a close, we find ourselves reflecting on the tapestry of tales that have long since faded into silence. From the fiery breath of dragons and the whimsical caprices of fairies, to the vengeful spirits and malevolent witches, we've explored how the medieval mind teemed with a myriad of supernatural beings. These entities were not mere figments of imagination, but were woven from the very fabric of human experience, embodying the collective hopes, fears, and turmoil of a civilization beset by famine, war, plague, and spiritual upheaval. In an age where the boundary between the ordinary and the otherworldly seemed but a whisper away, these stories thrived. We've encountered the scribes and bards, figures like Gervase of Tilbury Walter Map and Johannes Hartlieb, who, while navigating the dense thickets of theological and philosophical debate, diligently recorded these chilling narratives. Their work ensured that these stories would echo through time, influencing countless genres, from the brooding shadows of Gothic literature to the spine-chilling realms of contemporary horror cinema. Yet our delve into medieval folklore does more than just entertain. It holds up a mirror to the very essence of human nature. Despite their peculiarities, these tales resonate with universal themes: the dread of the unknown, the yearning for justice in a world often ruled by whim, and the poignant awareness of our own finite existence. They remind us with a poignant clarity that despite our strides in technology and science, we remain fundamentally unchanged, a species bound by stories crafting narratives to navigate the labyrinth of life. So let us not dismiss these medieval tales as quaint relics or mere historical footnotes. Instead, let us stand in awe of the medieval imagination's ability to confront the darkest corners of human experience, transforming them into narratives of awe, terror, and wisdom. These stories continue to echo through the ages, not just as echoes of a bygone era, but as vibrant living testaments to our enduring humanity. Down the centuries, these tales have whispered to the profound reservoirs of fear and awe that dwell within us all. The medieval world may have faded into history, but its dreams and nightmares persist, haunting our collective psyche. The characters may shift, the names evolve, but the essence of the stories endures unbroken. They are retold around crackling campfires woven into the pages of books, brought to life in films and video games, anywhere people come together to gaze into the abyss and ponder what might gaze back. In this manner, the folklore of the Middle Ages thrives, an eternal thread of storytelling that stretches back to the days when our ancestors first huddled around hearths whispering about the lurking shadows. As we conclude our journey through this haunting and mesmerizing tapestry of medieval folklore, remember the stories never truly end. They evolve as they always have, as long as there are voices to speak them and ears eager to listen, wrapped in a blanket of suspense and wonder. Is this not the true enchantment of folklore? Its ability to weave us together across the span of ages, to echo our shared hopes and fears, to affirm our common humanity against the backdrop of the vast unknown universe. The medieval storytellers, with their voices now silent, have left us a legacy that endures. So the next time you hear a mysterious creak in the night, or a chill runs down your spine, or you find yourself wondering about the unseen just beyond the glow of your fire, think of those ancient bards. You are part of a timeless dialogue between human imagination and the enigmatic darkness. And with this in mind, dear listener, I leave you to your slumber. May your dreams remain undisturbed by the spectral whispers of yesteryears. As we journey deeper into the macabre menagerie of medieval folklore, we encounter some of the most chilling and disturbing creatures that were believed to prowl the dark, foreboding forests and the murky, shadow-laden swamps of medieval Europe. These entities were not the sanitized, charming characters of today's children's tales. Oh no, they were malevolent beings born from the very essence of primal fears and ancient superstitions, ever ready to ensnare the unwary and drag them into the depths of doom. Imagine the terror, the sheer dread that must have gripped the hearts of medieval people as they thought of these creatures. Perhaps no creature was as spine-chilling as the werewolf. The notion of a human morphing into a voracious wolf-like beast under the pale, haunting light of the full moon, this is a myth that has not only endured but has woven itself into the very fabric of folklore across the globe. Yet in medieval Europe, the werewolf, or lycanthrope, as they were sometimes known, took on a particularly sinister, almost diabolical persona. These werewolves were perceived as humans who had bartered their very souls with the devil, trading their humanity for the ghastly ability to transform into wolves. This metamorphosis bestowed upon them not only superhuman strength and speed, but also an insatiable bloodlust, making them the epitome of a perfect killing machine. By day, they might blend in, appearing as ordinary men and women, perhaps even your neighbor or friend. But as the moon swelled to its fullest and the night air grew thick with mystery, they would cast off their human guise, embracing the wild, untamed beast within. Isn't it fascinating the way folklore captures our deepest fears and turns them into tales that both terrify and captivate us? These stories, rich with the essence of human survival and resilience, remind us that even in the darkest times there is a spark of wonder, a glimmer of magic waiting to be discovered. Let your imagination roam these haunted landscapes where the line between the human and the monstrous blurs, and where the spirit's endurance shines through crafting light from the shadows. In the dense whispering woods of Ireland, a priest stumbled upon a sight so surreal it could only belong to the pages of ancient lore. There, under the watchful gaze of the moon, he encountered two creatures of legend, wolves, that spoke with the sorrow-laden voices of humans. They were not mere beasts, but a man and woman from Osiri, cursed to roam the earth as wolves every 7 years, a penance for sins long past. The priest, his heart swelling with compassion, offered solace to the she-wolf, her life ebbing away, and administered the last rites as her companion. The male wolf vanished into the shadowy embrace of the forest, only to return with a sheep carcass to feed his dying mate. This tender moment, set against the backdrop of horror, paints a picture of love and sacrifice. A poignant scene indeed. Yet across the sea, in the annals of Livonian history, another tale unfolds, equally captivating, yet starkly different in its implications. Here in 1692, a peasant named Thias stood before a court, his confession chilling yet strangely noble. He claimed not the mantle of a mere beast, but as one of the hounds of God, tasked with a divine mission. Thrice yearly he descended into the abyss to wage war against witches and wizards, ensuring the land's fertility. This account, penned by the Baltic German scholar Karl Hermann, offers a glimpse into the intricate tapestry of werewolf folklore, where these creatures were not solely figures of dread, but sometimes ambivalent or even guardians of the earth. However, the medieval fear of werewolves transcended mere stories and travelers' tales. It bled into the very fabric of society with dire consequences. In 1521, in the shadowed village of Poligny, France, Pierre Bergot and Michel Verdun faced the ultimate price for their alleged lycanthropy. Under the cruel hand of torture, they confessed to being werewolves, to having devoured the innocent. Their trial, a grim spectacle, was presided over by the Inquisitor General of Besançon, who would later write at length on the diabolical nature of these creatures. This was but one of many such trials where the line between myth and reality blurred, leading to tragedy and the relentless hunt for those perceived as monsters. In human guise, the werewolf myth. Its roots entwining deep within the ancient soils of countless cultures where humans could shift and morph with the moon's whimsy. Yet it was the medieval Christian church that cast these shapeshifters in a sinister light. Theologians such as the Venerable Thomas Aquinas argued fervently that only the divine could orchestrate true transformation. Thus, any human who dared to change form must be under the devil's dark influence. This sinister twist entwined werewolves with the burgeoning medieval fixation on witchcraft and heresy, transforming them into not mere beasts of bloodlust, but malevolent agents of Satan himself. Oh, what a chilling embodiment of the deep-seated dread concerning the indistinct line between the tamed and the untamed, between the realms of civilization and the abyss of savagery. The medieval wilderness was perceived as a shadowy realm where not only wild beasts but wilder men roamed ready to ensnare and devour the unwary traveler. Werewolves epitomized the terrifying prospect of the wilderness seeping into and corrupting the human soul, reducing men to a state of primal degradation. This primal fear was echoed in another prevalent medieval symbol, the wild man, or wood woes, those hirsute, unclothed figures wielding clubs believed to haunt the dense, untamed forests of medieval Europe. Sometimes portrayed as noble savages, they bore a raw, untamed strength and an intrinsic bond with nature. Yet more commonly, they were depicted as brutish and perilous, the antithesis to the refined courtly gentleman. In the art of the time, wild men were often shown subdued or vanquished by knights or saints, symbolizing the victory of Christian civilization over pagan barbarity. But they also served as a stark reminder of the wildness lurking within each man, the beastly nature that could usurp control if one wandered too far from the righteous path. Both werewolves and wild men reflected the medieval conviction of the flesh's inherent sinfulness and frailty, a constant battle against the wild that threatened to consume them all. The human body in all its wild and untamed essence was often perceived as a tempestuous beast ever on the brink of hurling the soul into the abyss of depravity, if not fiercely reined in. Imagine living in an era where the specters of disease, famine, and violence were as common as the rising sun. Oh, how chilling the thought that the beast might lurk within that one's own flesh could turn traitor and wreak havoc upon the self. But these tales of werewolves and wild men were more than just echoes of dread for the flesh in the untamed wilderness. They whispered caution into the ears of the faithful, warning against the perilous path of social and moral deviation. To embrace the werewolf was to renounce one's very humanity, to surrender to the primal beastly urges that clash against the divine order set forth by God. Wild men, too, were emblematic of a life beyond the pale of civilized society, a return to the barbaric pre-Christian savagery. These narratives underscored the critical necessity of adhering to one's rightful station in the social ladder of yielding to the dual authorities of church and state. To wander from the righteous path, to succumb to temptation and sin, was to gamble with more than just one's soul. It was to risk the very essence of one's humanity. As the medieval period unfolded, the lore of werewolves began to intertwine with the burgeoning witch hunts that swept through Europe like wildfire. Accused witches were frequently accused of transforming into beasts, wolves among them, to enact their dark designs. The capability to morph into a wolf became yet another damning sign of a witch's pact with the devil, further blurring the lines between myth and the tangible world. Take, for instance, the harrowing tale of Peter Stump, a German farmer put to death in 1589 after excruciating torture. Under duress, Stump confessed to his lycanthropy spanning over a quarter century, alleging that the devil had bestowed upon him a magical belt, enabling his transformation into a fearsome beast. In the chilling annals of history, Peter Stump's tale stands out as a grotesque testament to the macabre hysteria of his era. Imagine, if you will, a man claiming to have devoured the innocence of 14 children, the sanctity of 2 expectant mothers, and an untold number of livestock. His punishment was as brutal as his alleged crimes, stretched upon the breaking wheel, his flesh seared by the cruel kiss of red-hot pincers, his limbs shattered like fragile twigs, and his head finally severed, perched atop a pole, as a grim warning to others who might dare to embrace the darkness within. Oh, how the trials of werewolves and witches had evolved from mere campfire whispers to a frenzy of sadistic justice in the late medieval and early modern periods. No longer confined to the pages of lurid travelers' accounts, the werewolf had morphed into a tangible demon, a malevolent force that must be ruthlessly eradicated. Yet as the last wisps of smoke from the pyres of the accused dissipated into the air, the werewolf's grip on the collective psyche did not loosen. In festivals like the Bavarian Fastnacht, where the line between festivity and fear blurred, people donned wolf pelts and masks, invoking the wild man and werewolf myths in a curious dance of celebration and superstition. Even now, the werewolf endures as a figure of pathos and terror, a cursed soul, wrestling with its inner beast, a staple in horror narratives that echo the deep-seated fears and fascinations of the medieval mind. These tales not only highlight the perceived fragility of the boundary between man and beast, but also serve as a haunting reflection of the darkness that lurks within us all. In a world where life was harsh, brief, and surrounded by an encroaching wilderness, these stories were more than just tales. They were stark reminders of the monsters that could awaken within in a time when civilization seemed but a thin veneer over the raw, untamed wilds. In the tapestry of medieval lore, tales of werewolves and wild men wove a cautionary narrative urging all to cling fiercely to their humanity amidst the vast, terrifying expanse of the universe. These stories whispered chilling tales of the perils that awaited those who succumbed to sin, straying from the sanctified path of Christian virtue. Yet within these grim warnings, there lurked a curious allure, a dark fantasy of breaking free from the shackles of medieval society, embracing the raw, untamed essence of our primal selves. Oh, the seductive thrill of becoming a werewolf, shedding the cloak of civilization to roam under the moon's ghostly glow, if only for a fleeting night. The medieval werewolf indeed stands as a haunting emblem of the darkness that stirs within each of us, the beast that slumbers ever restless beneath the fragile facade of our civilized world. It serves as a stark reminder that despite our modern advancements, the wild beckons us still, its call resonating in our very blood and bones. Thus we continue to spin these yarns of werewolves and wild men, just as our ancestors did. For in these shadowy tales, we encounter not only our deepest fears, but also our darkest yearnings. We wrestle with the essence of humanity in a world often cruel and unyielding, constantly reminding ourselves of the necessity to hold on to our humanity, even as the inner beast howls to the indifferent moon. Now, as we venture deeper into the haunted forests of medieval folklore, we meet another figure both cherished and dreaded, the witch. In the medieval mind, witches were nefarious enchanters, predominantly women who wielded dark magic with, the very essence of fear and intrigue, where souls are bartered for shadowy powers. In the dark corridors of medieval history, the roots of witch beliefs entwined pagan whispers, Christian doctrine, and echoes of ancient myths. Picture this: witches soaring on broomsticks, stirring mysterious brews in bubbling cauldrons, and dancing in the moonlight with demonic companions. These images, steeped in the lore of malevolent spirits and powerful goddesses, coalesce into the modern archetype of the witch during the Middle Ages. But why, one might ponder, did these disparate threads of belief weave so tightly into one fearful tapestry? The answer lies not in the shadows, but in the heart of the Christian church itself. To the medieval theologians, these witches were not merely misguided followers of old ways or benign folk healers. No, they were seen as vile soldiers in Satan's army, waging a celestial war against the very essence of goodness and light. As the 13th century dawned, so did the Inquisition, a formidable arm of the Catholic Church intent on eradicating heresy. With each passing year, the Church's fixation on witchcraft intensified. Inquisitors like Bernard Gui and Nicholas Emmerich penned exhaustive manuals detailing the supposed rituals and sinister signs of witchcraft, setting the stage for the catastrophic witch hunts that would soon engulf Europe. Yet it was not until the 15th century that the witch hysteria truly seized the medieval psyche. In a pivotal moment, Pope Innocent VIII in 1484 unleashed the bull Summis Desiderantes Affectibus, explicitly branding witchcraft as anathema to the Church's sanctity. 2 years hence, the notorious Malleus Maleficarum, penned by German inquisitors Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger, emerged as the witch hunter's Bible, a work as chilling as it was misogynistic, painting women as inherently frail and prone to the devil's wiles. Oh, how these dark times shaped our perceptions, casting long shadows that linger even today. Sinister minions of darkness, these devil's own would take flight under the cover of night to convene at clandestine gatherings known as Sabbaths. There they would pay homage to the Prince of Evil, indulge in debauchery, and conspire to dismantle the very fabric of Christian society. The Malleus Maleficarum, that infamous guidebook, not only detailed these nefarious rites, but it also provided meticulous instructions on how to unearth, question, and ultimately eradicate those ensnared by the devil's snare. Empowered by such a formidable doctrine, medieval witch hunters embarked on their somber mission with a fervor rekindled. Across the breadth of Europe, accusations of witchcraft burgeoned, propelled by a venomous cocktail of superstition, deep-seated misogyny, and religious zealotry. Women, perceived as frail in faith and thus more easily swayed by the devil's allure, found themselves particularly susceptible to these vile charges. One of the darkest episodes in this grim saga unfolded in the French town of Arras in 1459. Here, a condemned murderer, Robin de Vaux, in a desperate bid for clemency, claimed allegiance to a vast network of witches implicating many of the town's leading figures. His accusations ignited a wildfire of fear and frenzy, sweeping through the town like a plague. Under the excruciating duress of torture, the accused spilled forth confessions of attending nocturnal feasts, venerating a demon in the guise of a goat, and partaking in unthinkable acts of cannibalism and infanticide. They boasted of wielding dark magic to curse fields, spread pestilence, and assassinate foes. The Arras trials culminated in the tragic burning of 12 souls, yet their repercussions stretched far beyond their immediate victims. These trials solidified the image of the witch as an insidious, Satan-worshipping peril to Christian civilization in the medieval psyche. This portrayal was further etched into the public consciousness through works of art and literature. Albrecht Dürer's engraving, The Four Witches, and Hans Baldung Green's Witches' Sabbath painted vivid, grotesque visions of these malevolent gatherings. Oh, what dread must have haunted the hearts of those who witnessed or merely imagined such scenes. How could one not question the very nature of human darkness when faced with such terrifying portrayals? Ah, the dread and the darkness that engulfed Europe in those times. As the witch hunt spiraled into a frenzy, their flames fueled by sexualized depictions of diabolical acts, there existed amidst the clamor voices that dared to whisper reason. Imagine, dear reader, the Dutch physician Johann Va, with his groundbreaking work in 1563, Depressies Demonum. He stood alone, a beacon of rationality in the tempest, arguing that these so-called witches were not minions of Satan, but rather poor souls, women, whose minds had been twisted by delusions, not by the devil's hand. His was a voice calling out in the wilderness, seeking to replace the hysteria with understanding, to offer a medical and psychological lens through which to view the chaos of witchcraft. Yet how quickly was this voice of reason trampled underfoot by the relentless march of the witch hunters? Their cries for blood and vengeance echoed louder, drowning out any attempt at compassion or logic. The persecution, rather than abating, intensified, climbing to the horrific crescendo of mass witch trials. Can you fathom, dear reader, the sheer scale of this tragedy? Between 40,000 to 60,000 lives, predominantly women, extinguished on the pretext of witchcraft, their souls torn from this earth in Europe between the 15th and 18th centuries. The legacy of these medieval witch hunts is not merely a footnote in history, but a chilling testament to an era where superstition, misogyny, and religious zealotry intertwined to weave a tapestry of terror. Countless innocents met their demise on the pyre, and the rack their lives sacrificed to the specter of the witch that haunted the collective medieval psyche. But let us ponder, what does this reveal about our own nature? Our tendency to demonize, to project our fears and insecurities onto the other, to make of the witch a scapegoat for all that ails society, from the blight of crops to the spread of disease, from sexual repression to the tremors of social change. In a world where life hung by a thread and nature itself seemed capricious and often cruel, the witch was not just a figure of fear, but a symbol of the supernatural evil that could be pinpointed, battled, and ultimately vanquished. Ah, the witch, once a symbol of dread, now a beacon of empowerment. In medieval times, the very notion of witches was wielded as a tool by society desperate to impose some semblance of order upon the chaotic whirl of life. They burned the so-called witches not out of justice, but in a frantic bid to control the uncontrollable, to carve an illusion of stability from the bedrock of disorder. Yet how the tides have turned. Today, the witch has been reborn in our cultural imagination. No longer the wicked crone of old tales, she stands as a testament to feminine might, a sage who whispers secrets of the natural world. This transformation speaks volumes of our evolving perceptions of gender power and the spiritual. But let us not forget the grim shadows of history linger as a stark warning. The witch hunts of yore remind us of the perils of ignorance, the abyss of fear, and the abyss of fanaticism. They are a chilling echo of humanity's darker tendencies, our readiness to turn against the unknown, our swiftness to condemn what we do not comprehend. As we journey through the eerie corridors of medieval folklore, we are continually struck by the indistinct line between the natural and the supernatural, the human and the monstrous. In those days, life was a fleeting, brutal affair, where the unknown lurked just beyond the glow of the hearth. These dark tales were not merely stories. They were survival guides, giving form to the formless fears that haunted the night. From the voracious werewolves that roamed the forest to the sinister witches concocting their brews in the dim, these creatures of lore were the physical embodiments of a society's deepest dreads. They represented the wild, untamed forces that threatened at every turn to swallow the fragile order of medieval existence. They were the monsters we, in our fear, made in our own image, reflections of our inner turmoil, our outer chaos. And yet amidst these tales of terror, one cannot help but ponder, what does it mean to create such beasts? What does it reveal about the human spirit that we conjure up such horrors to explain the horrors we cannot understand? Oh, how these dark mirrors of our souls reflect the most primal of fears. They hold up to us our own capacity for savagery, for transgression, for shattering the sacred bonds and taboos we hold dear. In the haunting figure of the werewolf, we are forced to confront the beast that dwells within us, the raw, animalistic urges that simmer just beneath the surface of our civilized facade. As the chilling narratives of Gervase of Tilbury enthralled his readers with tales of devilish imps and sinister spirits, another 12th century scholar was also capturing the bizarre beliefs of his era. Enter Walter Map, a courtier serving the illustrious King Henry II of England, who left behind a peculiar anthology known as De Nugis Curialium, or Courtier's Trifles. Despite its seemingly trivial title, Map's eclectic assemblage of anecdotes, rumors, and folklore offers a riveting peek into the medieval mind. Born around 1140 in Herefordshire, Walter Map was not merely a man of letters. His education at the University of Paris equipped him with a sharp intellect, which he honed further through various ecclesiastical roles, including a canonship at St. Paul's Cathedral in London and the office of Chancellor at Lincoln. Yet it was his role as a courtier and diplomat that truly enriched his narrative trove, gathering stories and gossip from the breadth of Europe. In De Nugis Curialium, Map delivers these jewels of information with a satirical, often irreverent twist. His playful tone distinguishes him from the more somber chroniclers like Gervase of Tilbury. With a deft touch, Map pokes fun at the follies of the nobility and clergy, sketching a vibrant tableau of a court teeming with a scandal and intrigue. Yet amidst his barbed witticisms, he weaves in unsettling, supernatural tales that chill the spine. One such tale recounts the eerie encounter of a young man from Herefordshire who, driven by curiosity or perhaps fate, ventured into a dense, foreboding forest. There he meets a spectral knight astride a jet-black horse. This ghostly figure challenges the youth to a jousting match, promising rewards that glitter with temptation, yet are shadowed by the unknown. What fate awaits this brave soul in the embrace of the forest mysteries? Alas, he falls prey to temptation. The young man, swayed by the siren call of greed, agrees to the knight's challenge. In that fateful moment, he is unhorsed, his fate sealed as he is dragged into the knight's otherworldly dominion, never to be glimpsed by mortal eyes again. Walter Map unfurls this tale not merely as a moral fable, but as a stark warning against the perils of pride and the insatiable hunger for wealth. Yet within this narrative lies a chilling echo of medieval thought, a world where supernatural beings dwell in the liminal spaces, poised to ensnare the unsuspecting into eternal peril. Imagine, if you will, the ethereal figure of Map's phantom knight, a ghostly sentinel straddling the line between the earthly and the arcane, much like the fairies and demons of Gervase of Tilbury's lore. This tale, one of many in Map's De Nugis Curialium, teases at the medieval intrigue with creatures that defy the natural order. Another narrative thread weaves through Map's tapestry, the tale of a soldier scaver who uncovers a chilling truth about his wife. By night, she anoints herself with a mystical salve, transforming into a raven to soar away. Driven by curiosity, Scaver dares to taste the ointment, only to find himself metamorphosed into a hawk. From above, he spies upon a clandestine assembly of witches, his own wife among them, plotting malevolence under the moon's pale gaze. This anecdote, with its dark undertones, prefigures a centuries-long European obsession with witchcraft, where the fear of humans, particularly women morphing into animals, tapped into primal fears of the beast within. Map's witch tale, steeped in misogyny, reflects the era's deep-seated suspicion of women, portraying them as natural deceivers and sinners ensnared by magic and demonic temptation. This suspicion, intertwined with superstition, would later ignite the flames of witch hunts, claiming countless lives in its wake. Through De Nugis Curialium, Walter Map treads a delicate path between belief and doubt, recounting supernatural events with a solemnity that leaves one pondering. Where does truth end and fiction begin? The intricate dance between skepticism and fascination with the uncanny that medieval scholars like Walter Map engaged in, how they wrestled with the allure of folklore, yet stood firm in their Christian convictions, offering us a window into their world both enchanting and perplexing. Map's ambiguous stance on the supernatural was not mere whimsy. It was a reflection of the complex attitudes that permeated the intellectual circles of his time. While many dismissed tales of fairies and magic as the folly of the uneducated or the remnants of paganism, there was an undeniable pull towards the thrill of a well-told ghost story. For Map and his peers, these tales were not just for amusement. They served a dual purpose: to entertain and to impart moral lessons. Oh, the delightful irony! Here was Walter Map weaving narratives that both warned against straying from the path of Christian virtue and tantalized his audience with peeks into a shadowy, mysterious realm. His writing style, brimming with playful wordplay and sly asides, amplifies this ambiguity. One might wonder, does he jest at the very tales he purports to believe? Consider the tale of the avaricious cleric plagued by a talking fox, whose interruptions during sermons are both a divine retribution and a source of comedic relief. You should know the fox chides every time the priest speaks of greed, turning the pulpit into a stage for a cosmic jest. Map revels in this absurdity, presenting the story not just as a moral tale, but as a delightful spectacle of hypocrisy laid bare. Walter Map, alongside contemporaries like Gervase of Tilbury, was a product of his era, immersed in the folklore and superstitions of the Middle Ages, yet always attempting to reconcile these with the teachings of Christianity and the wisdom of classical antiquity. His De Nugis Curialium stands as a testament to the medieval intrigue with the bizarre, the miraculous, and the unsettling. This fascination is echoed in the numerous surviving manuscripts, influencing later medieval writers and echoing through the ages. Thus, Map's work not only entertains, but also invites us to ponder. Are we not all, in some way like Map, drawn to the shadows while seeking the light? As we delve deeper into the tapestry of medieval lore, we encounter the enigmatic figure of Walter Map, a Welsh storyteller whose fascination with the supernatural left an indelible mark on the Arthurian legends. His works, a treasure trove of magical marvels and uncanny encounters, have not only shaped the narrative of Arthur, but also cast long shadows over the collective imagination of generations. Oh, the legacy he has woven. Imagine, dear reader, the world Map inhabited a realm where the line between the mundane and the mystical blurred, where tales of mischievous sprites and impish fairies dance through the pages of his De Nugis Curialium. These stories, rich with the whispers of medieval rumor and the echoes of ancient folklore, serve as windows to the soul of an era long past. How vividly they paint the fears and fantasies of those who lived in a time when the unknown was as close as the next shadow. As the centuries rolled on, the playful charm of these tales took a darker turn. The once whimsical sprites and fairies morphed into figures of dread, becoming the malevolent forces in a world increasingly fearful of the supernatural. The medieval tapestry darkened its threads, woven with suspicion and dread, leading to the tragic crescendo of the witch hunts that ravaged Europe. Here, the seeds of superstition sown by the likes of Map sprouted into a forest of paranoia and persecution. In this storm of fear, the witch emerged as the quintessential villain of medieval nightmares, a figure of darkness, a female sorcerer whose very existence was an affront to the moral fabric of Christian society. Long before the flames of witch trials licked the skies, whispers of diabolical witchcraft had already taken root in the fertile soil of European folklore. What a transformation from playful folklore to a symbol of terror. Thus, Walter Map's tales, with their blend of humor and horror, continue to enchant and unsettle, inviting us to ponder the fine line between myth and reality, between the light of storytelling and the shadow of fear. Amidst a tumultuous brew of pagan myths, biblical lore, and deep-seated misogyny, witches emerge in the public eye not as paragons of Christian virtue, but as their very antithesis. Oh, how starkly they contrasted with the ideals of chastity, obedience, and piety. Instead, these women were painted with strokes of lust, rebellion, and utter depravity. Picture this: the accused witches, often the elderly, the poor, the outcasts, those living on the very edges of society. Their mere presence seemed like a dagger to the heart of the medieval paternalistic order. The late Middle Ages, a time of both fear and fascination with witchcraft, was marked by the scars left by the Black Death in the seismic shifts of social structures. As the feudal system began to crumble and traditional beliefs faced the onslaught of new ideas, many found solace in superstition, a beacon of certainty in a world teetering on the brink of chaos. It was in this highly charged environment that witch trials began to multiply across Europe. The initial spark of this widespread hysteria was lit in the French-Swiss borderlands at the dawn of the 15th century. Over the next 2 centuries, witch hunts swept through the continent, claiming the lives of approximately 50,000 souls, overwhelmingly women. The methods to ferret out these supposed witches were as barbaric as they were ludicrous. Imagine her accused women subjected to the most grueling interrogations, tortured until they confessed to the most fantastical crimes, flying to Sabbaths, cavorting with demons, cursing the harvest. Once a confession was coerced, the fate of the accused was sealed, often culminating in the excruciating agony of death by fire. One cannot speak of this dark era without mentioning Formicarius, or Book of Ants, penned by Johannes Nieder, a German theologian in the 1430s. Nieder, a Dominican friar and a fervent reformer, viewed the eradication of witchcraft as part of a holy war to cleanse the church of heresy. How fervent was his belief and how tragic the consequences of his zeal. In the Formicarius, Nieder sketches a ghastly tableau of witches portraying them as Satan's corrupt minions, forsaking their baptism for a life steeped in the most vile of acts. He vividly recounts witches soaring through the night skies to clandestine assemblies, where they bow before the devil, desecrate sacred rituals, and weave sinister plots against their unsuspecting neighbors. Nieder's chilling depictions of these nocturnal Sabbaths and dark enchantments not only cemented the image of the diabolical witch in the medieval psyche, but also became a beacon for those who would hunt them. His work, devoured by the masses, was a grim manual for identifying and condemning these so-called sorcerers. Yet amidst this witch-hunting zeal, Nieder himself harbored a profound unease with the very superstitions he fought to eradicate. A scholar immersed in the scholastic tradition, he was not blind to the folly of many witch accusations, recognizing their roots in ignorance, spite, or sheer fantasy. Consider the tale he tells of a woman accused of witchcraft, her fate sealed by a neighbor's dream that she had cursed him. Under the cruel grip of torture, she confessed to an array of bizarre deeds, from riding the winds on a broomstick to birthing a brood of monstrous toads. Yet Nieder, with a hint of skepticism, questions the truth behind these fantastical tales, noting the unmistakable signs of coerced confessions. This ambivalence reveals the medieval intellectuals' conflicted stance on witchcraft and superstition. On one side, theologians like Nieder viewed sorcery as a perilous illusion, a vestige of pagan folly that demanded eradication. But on the flip side, could they wholly ignore the supernatural, which was so intricately entwined with Christian teachings? After all, if God could perform miracles, could not demons also wield their dark powers? Who dares claim that witches with their midnight flights and blighting curses couldn't possibly ensnare the unwary? The boundary between what was deemed orthodox and what was whispered as superstition was as murky as a fog-laden moor, ensnaring even the most erudite of clergymen in the feverish grip of the witch hunt. As the medieval tapestry began to unravel into the dawn of the early modern era, the witch craze surged to its dreadful zenith. The publication of the infamous Malleus Maleficarum, or Hammer of Witches, in 1487, a grim manual that detailed the methodologies of witch hunting, fanned the flames of superstition across the European landscape. Over the ensuing 2 centuries, thousands upon thousands of women, alongside a lesser number of men, were subjected to unimaginable tortures, their lives extinguished by hanging or fire, all under the charge of witchcraft. The shadow of these witch hunts lingers, still a stark testament to the dire consequences of unbridled superstition and the scapegoating of the vulnerable. Yet as we peer into the murky depths of medieval folklore, let us not forget that these grim tales are but the darker shades of the same palette that paints our most uplifting myths and timeless stories. The medieval mind, oh, what a labyrinth of contrasts! It was capable of the most brutal cruelty, yet also a profound transcendent beauty. In the dim light cast by the witch's pyre, or within the enchanted glades of the fairy realm, we glimpse the very essence of our ancestors' imaginations, their deepest fears, their most fervent hopes. Through their stories, we see our own reflections, a mirror held up to our most profound desires and darkest anxieties. As we drift into slumber, Let us envision a realm where the only monsters are those we craft in our tales, and where magic is nothing more than the spellbinding weave of a well-told story. For in the end, perhaps the most enduring gift from medieval folklore is the gentle reminder that even in our darkest times, the light of imagination can guide us back to hope. Even in the bleakest epics of history, the indefatigable human spirit still seeks wonder, mystery, and the hopeful glimmer of a new day. So let us close our weary eyes and surrender to sleep, comforted by the realization that the specters and sprites of yesteryears are mere shadows on our walls, nothing but creations of our own mind. And let our dreams be filled with visions of a future where reason and compassion reign supreme, where fear and superstition are vanquished, and where the only enchantment we weave is through acts of kindness and understanding. Good night, dear listener, and may your dreams be pleasant. The fervor of witch hunting, which gripped the world for centuries, left a haunting legacy that persisted well into modern times. The echoes of the medieval witch trials reverberated through the infamous Salem witch trials of 1692, where hysteria took hold of the Puritan community. 19 innocent souls were condemned to death, accused of consorting with dark forces and casting curses upon their fellow villagers. The names of the executed, Bridget Bishop, Sarah Good, Susanna Martin, among others, serve as a mournful testament to how superstition can fuel lethal paranoia. As the Enlightenment era emerged in the 18th century, promoting reason over dogma, the shadows of ancient folklore still lingered. Across Europe, the chilling figure of the vampire persisted in the collective psyche. In 1732, the case of Arnold Paule, a Serbian soldier, sent shockwaves through society when it was believed he returned from the grave as a bloodthirsty specter. His exhumed body was subjected to the medieval ritual of staking through the heart, a method believed to finally lay the undead to rest. The Romantic movement of the early 19th century rekindled interest in the Gothic lore of the Middle Ages. Writers and poets inspired by these dark tales crafted narratives that would become iconic, exploring the depths of human fear and fascination with the supernatural. In the shadow of the Gothic, where terror molds the contours of emerging genres, Samuel Taylor Coleridge's 1798 masterpiece, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, summons the spectral figure of the wandering Jew doomed to an eternal pilgrimage across the earth. The albatross, once a harbinger of good fortune, now lies slain by the mariner's hand, its lifeless form a chilling emblem of his sin and remorse. Like the spectral undead of medieval lore, the mariner must bear his guilt through the ages, a tale echoing the penance of those condemned to wander as revenants. The Gothic narrative evolves, entwining medieval mystique with the Victorian era's shadowy fears. John Polidori's The Vampire and Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla seduce the reader with the allure of the vampire, transforming these creatures from mere folklore into icons of the 19th century's dark imagination. These stories, like whispers in the bong, set the stage for Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1897, where the ancient Transylvanian legends of the Strigoi, the undead, find a new terrifying life. Through Count Dracula, a grotesque embodiment of medieval superstition, primal fears are not only resurrected, but given immortality on the printed page. Yet even as the Victorian era endeavored to dispel the remnants of medieval irrationality, with the light of science, the old myths clung stubbornly to life. Enter Margaret Murray, whose 1921 work, The Witch Cult in Western Europe, ignited a flame that would rekindle interest in the ancient pagan practices, suggesting that the witches of old were not mere figments of superstition, but keepers of a prehistoric faith. Her theories, controversial yet captivating, spurred the birth of neo-paganism and Wicca movements that both embraced and reshaped the dark stereotypes of the medieval witch. As the 20th century dawned, a new breed of scholars emerged dedicated to capturing the fading echoes of Europe's peasant traditions. Andrew Lang and the Brothers Grimm, with their collections of fairy tales and folk beliefs, alongside W.B. Yeats, who celebrated the rich tapestry of Celtic folklore, stood as guardians of a cultural heritage that was both timeless and at risk of being lost forever. What treasures, one wonders, would have been lost had these luminaries not turned their pens to the preservation of these ancient stories? In the hands of those who hold the pen, the often disturbing medieval countryside laws were transformed into quaint tales of superstition or whimsical fantasies, their sharp edges softened for bedtime stories. Yet beneath the surface of these sanitized narratives, the eerie undercurrents remain beckoning us to delve deeper, to read between the lines. When the Grimms speak of Ferude, a cannibalistic witch who entices a curious girl to her tragic fate, we can't help but hear the reverberations of medieval legends, like the quasi-historical tale of Melusine, the serpentine consort of a French count. The archetypes persist through time. The monstrous feminine, the defiant woman, the supernatural infiltrator of the domestic sphere. These motifs, though we might dismiss them as mere irrational echoes of a bygone era, still send shivers down our spine. They tap into primal fears that refuse to dissipate. In our age of skyscrapers and fiber optics, the ancient laws linger, casting long shadows over our progress. Psychologists ponder the evolutionary roots of our belief in ghosts and demons, while scientists explore how sleep paralysis might conjure visions of night-riding hags. Meanwhile, in the shadowy recesses of the internet, modern folklore in the form of creepypasta flourishes, recycling medieval motifs for a new generation. The digital legend of Slender Man, a faceless entity stalking children, would feel right at home in a 15th century manuscript, a spectral figure for the smartphone era. Perhaps the enduring lesson from medieval folklore is that the darkness of the human psyche can never be fully eradicated. Despite our best efforts to illuminate our world with the light of reason, the haunting imagination of our forebears continues to loom over us. To engage with the laws they've left behind is to confront the restless spirits in our mental attic, their chains clattering, reminding us of the darkness that still lurks unlit. Beyond the comforting glow of our campfire lies a realm of the unknown, a country that stirs the depths of our souls with tales that might unsettle our rest and linger in our dreams. These stories, though they might disturb our sleep, serve as poignant reminders of the delicate nature of our existence. Like the macabre dance of skeletons in medieval art, the eerie figures of folklore engage us in a haunting waltz with death and the unknown. We might shy away from their ghastly smiles, yet we are bound by an unspoken connection to the countless generations who have passed these tales down through time. In the stillness of our darkened chamber, as our mind wanders through the uneasy currents of the night, we find solace in the shadowy whispers of our ancestors. Their fearful visions, both enchanting and bewildering, continue to captivate us from the shadowy depths of history. Let us not brush off the eerie laws of the Middle Ages as mere relics of the past, for in truth their nightmares echo our own, viewed through the distorted lens of time. By gazing through the fissures into the medieval psyche, we might just catch a fleeting glimpse of a face reflected back at us, a face both familiar and alien, encapsulating the timeless human condition, teetering eternally between fear and fascination amidst the vast enigma of our existence. And so with this disquieting reflection, our journey through the spectral woods of medieval lore draws to a close. The campfire's light fades, the shadows stretch, and the wind murmurs secrets in an ancient tongue we are just beginning to decipher. It is time to let the embers cool and retreat to our beds, where these ancient stories might both haunt and ignite our dreams. Until the next adventure beckons, calling us once more into the restless realm of the past. Ah, weary traveler, as we bid farewell to this day, let me, your ever faithful chronicler, wish you a serene night in the sweetest of slumbers. May the night-riding hag with her spectral cloak and ghastly intentions pass you by without so much as a whisper of her presence. And should the grimacing Strix with its gory talons think to disturb your peace, let it find your throat unassailable as you drift into the comforting arms of sleep. Rest well, dear companion, and let your dreams be woven from threads of light far brighter than the dark visions we've explored. The unsettling realm of medieval folklore, with all its ghastly tales and eerie enchantments, will still be here upon your awakening, as steadfast as ever. It serves as a cracked mirror reflecting the eternal fears and the profound wonders that dance within the human soul. Now let us turn our gaze to Johannes Nider, a 15th century theologian born in the quaint Swabian village of Asni im Allgäu around 1380. A young man of sharp intellect and fervent piety, Nider joined the Dominican order and swiftly ascended its ranks. At the University of Vienna, where he taught theology, his mind became ensnared by the burgeoning threat of witchcraft that he perceived in society. Nider, driven by a sacred zeal, embarked on a meticulous quest to document the dark deeds of those accused of witchcraft and sorcery. He filled his notebooks with harrowing accounts, believing it his divine mission to unveil the evil that he saw seeping into Christendom. His obsession bore fruit in his magnum opus, Formicarius, published around 1437. This extensive 5-volume work was not just a collection, but a testament to his gathered knowledge on witchcraft, demons, and the sinister arts. In choosing the title, Formicarius, Nider drew an allegory to the industrious and cooperative nature of an ant colony, which he admired and aspired for the Christian community to emulate. Just as an ant colony thrives on order and unity, Nider envisioned the church working in harmony to excise the malignant growth of witchcraft from its midst. The very essence of society teetered on the brink, shaken to its core. Johannes Nider's Formicarius was not just a book. It was a clarion call, a battle anthem for theologians and clerics to gird themselves and engage in this holy crusade against the darkness. Its pages burst with tales so shocking, so laden with the stench of depravity, that they could only be born from the darkest corners of human imagination. Nider, with a fervor that bordered on obsession, painted vivid scenes of witches' sabbaths, where covens assembled under the cloak of night. There they paid homage to the devil, trampled upon sacred symbols, and indulged in acts of unspeakable carnality. Imagine, if you will, witches morphing into creatures of the night, soaring through the starlit sky on brooms or the prongs of pitchforks, their eyes casting curses upon the fields below. They pilfered the holiest of hosts to weave into their unholy rites and offered the innocence of unbaptized babes to their infernal lord. No act, no matter how vile, was beneath these followers of Satan. Particularly venomous was Nider's disdain for midwives, whom he accused of being in league with the devil. In his fevered recounting, these women were not just caregivers, but covert agents of darkness, binding newborns to evil. With secret rites, their bodies used as vessels for concocting dark potions. He went so far as to claim they snuffed out life in the womb only to partake in the macabre feast of the flesh with their sisterhood of witches. While some of his peers scoffed at his wilder assertions, Formicarius resonated deeply within the church's more anxious circles. The late Middle Ages were a time of upheaval where faith wavered and the shadow of the apocalypse loomed large. For many, Nider's nightmarish visions were not mere fantasies, but stark, terrifying realities, a dark mirror held up to a world teetering on the edge of oblivion. Consequently, Formicarius became a grim guidebook for witch hunters, its detailed accounts of witchcraft and methods of confession, extraction shaping the very image of the diabolical witch in the minds of the populace. Inquisitors and judges pored over its pages, seeking the signs of corruption that Nider had so meticulously cataloged as they sat in judgment over the accused. Johannes Nider's life was tragically cut short by the plague in 1438, yet the dark legacy of his work persisted, casting a long shadow over the centuries that followed. His Formicarius was the sinister seed from which sprouted the monstrous tree of witch hysteria. This notion that witches formed a vast, insidious network, tirelessly working to erode the bedrock of Christian civilization, provided a chilling justification for the unspeakable acts of torture and execution that would claim the lives of countless individuals, predominantly women. But Johannes Nider was no mere zealot. He was a man of his time, deeply entangled in the superstitions and fears that haunted the late medieval world. For him, witches were not figments of imagination, but a palpable, menacing reality. There was, however, an unsettling glee in how he recounted their supposed misdeeds. One can almost feel his prurient delight in the gruesome details of their alleged malevolence. Doesn't it make one ponder if Nider found some perverse satisfaction in his role as a soldier of Christ, fervently battling the lurking shadows of evil? Perhaps in his own mind, he envisioned himself as a noble crusader, a guardian of the faith courageously facing the darkest of foes. Yet through the lens of history, Nider appears less as a hero and more as a tragic, almost pitiful figure, a man so engulfed by his own paranoia and self-righteousness that he could no longer discern truth from fantasy. In his fervent quest to purge the world of what he perceived as evil, Nider inadvertently added to the world's store of sorrow and agony. His story serves as a poignant warning of the perils inherent in absolute certainty and moral panic. When fear and prejudice are allowed to eclipse reason and empathy, even the best intentions can lead to acts of profound cruelty and injustice. Johannes Nider, though long gone, leaves behind a legacy that compels us to reflect deeply on the nature of human fear and the consequences of unchecked zealotry. In his heart, Johannes Nider believed he was carrying out divine work, a conviction that would ultimately cast a shadow, not a light upon his legacy. Far from a beacon of hope, he became an architect of despair, igniting the fires of a deadly superstition that would engulf the innocent and scar the tapestry of European history with indelible marks. We do not honor him as a noble knight or a sage, but rather as a tragic, misguided soul who peered too deeply into the abyss of human sin, only to see his own visage reflected back as the devil's own. Watched at 50, then 23. Within the dark pages of medieval folklore, Johannes Nider emerges as both a figure of sorrow and dread, a stark testament to our inherent potential for cruelty cloaked in the guise of righteousness. Yet Nider's Formicarius was merely a single strand in the grim weave of late medieval folklore. As the medieval epic waned, Europeans were confronted by death on a scale never before imagined. 150-49. The land was ravaged by plague, famine, and war, each leaving a trail of devastation and desolation. Amidst this bleak landscape, it's no surprise that themes of mortality seeped into the art and narratives of the era. From this dark soil grew one of the most poignant symbols, the dance of death, or dance macabre. 151-11. This chilling metaphor encapsulated the universal and inexorable nature of death. The concept was straightforward, yet deeply resonant in a series of evocative scenes. Death, portrayed as a grinning skeleton, led a procession of humanity, monarchs and paupers, clerics and outcasts, the young and the old, all locked in a grim dance toward the grave. 150-134. These macabre depictions graced frescoes, woodcuts, and illuminated manuscripts throughout late medieval Europe. Among the most renowned was the expansive mural at in the early 15th century, an artist captured the somber essence of Paris's Cemetery of the Holy Innocents, set against a canvas of ashen despair. Here the skeletal specter of death danced a grim ballet with a motley assembly of the condemned, their expressions etched with terror and anguish. The dance of death, stark and unyielding, delivered its message with chilling clarity. No matter one's wealth or status, all are humbled before the great equalizer. Death in his bony embrace scorned the illusions of grandeur and the fleeting pleasures of earthly existence. In an era where societal ranks were as rigid as stone and the chasm between the haves and have-nots gaped like a chasm, there was a perverse solace in this universal truth. Yet the dance of death was not merely a memento mori, a stark reminder of life's transience. It was a sharp critique, a satirical jab at a society teetering on the brink of corruption and inequity. The figure of death, often depicted with a mischievous glee, delighted in deflating the pompous and exposing the sanctimonious. Imagine the dark, ironic chuckles that must have reverberated through the taverns and marketplace of medieval Europe as the oppressed whispered tales of the latest dance-finding. Fleeting joy in the notion that even the loftiest would eventually be humbled, their grand legacies reduced to mere whispers on the wind. The Dance of Death, however, was also a mirror to the grim realities of the time. The Black Death, that merciless scourge which decimated Europe in the 14th century and beyond, left an indelible scar on the collective soul. In a mere handful of years, half of Europe's population was extinguished by this relentless pestilence. The tales from those who bore witness to this catastrophe paint a harrowing picture of a world turned upside down, where the dance of life was abruptly interrupted by the relentless, macabre dance of death. In the wake of the plague, a haunting canvas was painted, portraying streets strewn with the lifeless bodies of entire families extinguished in mere days, the air thick with the stench of death. How could one not become consumed by the macabre and the grotesque in such times? The devastation was not merely physical, but seeped into the very sinews of society, unraveling the fabric of community and civility. As the death toll rose, so did the panic, tearing at the bonds that once held neighbors together. Jews and other marginalized groups bore the brunt of this societal fracture, scapegoated and subjected to brutalities. A pervasive sense of nihilism and despair gripped the populace, darkening the atmosphere with fear and suspicion. Here the dance of death transformed from a mere reflection on human follies into a sinister omen of the apocalypse looming ominously on the horizon. Yet amidst this tapestry of terror, there was an eerie catharsis in the dance of death. By facing the specter of mortality with laughter, by staring into the abyss with a defiant grin, medieval Europeans discovered a way to navigate the unfathomable trauma of their epoch. This dance, in its twisted form, served as therapy, a method to process the unthinkable, to find solace in our shared fate. It whispered to them that regardless of how dire and desolate the present might seem, death unites us all in its indiscriminate embrace. As the medieval curtain began to fall, and Europe slowly stepped from the plague's shadow, the fascination with death and the macabre gradually waned. However, the enduring legacy of the dance of death remained a poignant reminder of the resilience of the human spirit, even in the darkest of times. The echoes of its chilling imagery and biting wit reverberate through the ages, whispering tales of mortality and mockery. Its legacy can be seen in the macabre woodcuts of Albrecht Dürer, in the Brothers Grimm's tales twisted with dark whimsy, and in the Gothic novels that haunted the 9th century. Even now in our era fraught with anxiety and uncertainty, the dance of death strikes a chord, serving as a stark reminder of life's fleeting nature and the vanity of human ambition. As we reach the culmination of our exploration into the shadowy depths of medieval folklore, let us not forget the profound lesson of the dance of death. Despite our towering achievements and lofty dreams of eternal fame, we are all bound by the same inexorable fate. Confronted with this unyielding truth, perhaps our best recourse is to embrace the absurdity, the dark humor that life offers, to dance with death as it guides us into the great unknown, finding solace in the shared madness of our collective journey. And so we close the chapter on this grim and unsettling epoch of human history. The medieval era, with its blend of wonder and terror, its celestial beings and infernal creatures, fades into the mists of time. Yet the stories it has bequeathed us, tales of witches, werewolves, spectral lovers, and grinning skulls, will persist as long as we gather to recount the peculiar, poignant tapestry of our existence. Rest now, dear listener, and let your dreams carry you to an age where the boundary between worlds was but a whisper, where the marvelous and the macabre danced together under an indifferent cold moon. For at its core, perhaps history is nothing more than a long, strange dance, a dance of life, death, and everything in between. Imagine, if you will, a world where the veil between the living and the dead grows thin, where the echoes of mortality resonate in every heart and soul. After the relentless scourge of the Black Death receded, Europe was left in a state of profound despair, its people wrestling with an abyss of loss and a shattered perception of life. In this bleak atmosphere where existential fear was the unwelcome companion, the macabre and the morose flourished like dark roses. One of the most chilling expressions of this time was the dance macabre, or the dance of death. Envision, if you dare, a spectral scene, a skeleton, the very embodiment of death orchestrating a grim parade. Kings, peasants, clerics, and paupers, The young and the aged all are conscripted into this ghastly ballet. Death, with its ghastly grin, seizes the hands of its conscripts, dragging them into a macabre line dance toward the grave. This haunting spectacle was not confined to mere imagination, but was vividly painted on church walls, frescoes, and canvases throughout France, Germany, England, and beyond during the 15th century. One of the earliest and most celebrated, though now lost, was the mural at the Holy Innocents Cemetery in Paris, painted in 1424. It became a template for countless others, capturing the essence of an era steeped in melancholy. The Dance of Death was not merely art. It was a stark visual sermon on the capriciousness of life and the certainty of death, a stark reminder in a world still staggering from the plague's cruel impartiality. The Black Death had indeed leveled all societal distinctions, laying waste to the high and the low with equal abandon. The Dance Macabre echoed this truth, presenting death as the ultimate equalizer. A 15th century French chronicler observed this eerie trend, noting how cemeteries were adorned with these somber reminders. Vain and transitory things have been depicted, especially as a blanket reminder to all that though today we may be rich, noble, or powerful, soon we will all be nothing but dust and ashes, and that very soon. Here in this dance, each living soul finds its skeletal twin, a stark reflection of their own mortality. The Empress's crown, once a symbol of regal authority, now rests upon her desiccated remains, a stark contrast that chills the soul. The knight, once valiant and strong, is now helplessly drawn towards the abyss by his own decaying counterpart. It's a dance so grotesque where the only companion is a grinning cadaver, a chilling reminder of mortality's inescapable embrace. This motif, with its stark reminder of death, quickly infiltrated both the sacred and the profane. Within the hallowed walls of churches, it served as a stern memento mori, urging the devout to eschew worldly vanities and embrace penitence. But soon this chilling vision leaped from the cathedral's solemn embrace to grace the opulent halls of castles, appearing in court murals, the delicate pages of illuminated manuscripts, and even the intricate workings of decorative clocks. Imagine, if you will, the Parisian Cimetière des Innocents, where late medieval Parisians were confronted daily with their own mortality. As they passed the crowded graveyard, a procession of 30 life-size figures marched relentlessly towards the charnel house, where the bones of the departed lay heaped like some macabre mountain. Here, every archetype of human existence, from the highest pontiff to the humblest peasant, met their ghastly counterpart in death. The Dance of Death was far more than a mere artistic trend. It was a cultural mirror reflecting the deep-seated anxieties of a society haunted by the specter of death. If the Black Death made mortality terrifyingly real, the Dance Macabre transformed this grim reality into a symbolic tableau. Scholars have observed how this motif turned the rigid hierarchies of feudal life on their head. In life, social classes were distinctly separated, yet in this skeletal parade, all were equals, bound together by death's bony grip. Oh, the irony! The mighty, so often above the common fray, found themselves just another link in death's unyielding chain. And therein lies a dark comfort. Rich or poor, saint or sinner, all shared the same fate. While the living might cling to their vanities, the Dance Macabre whispered a chilling truth. Death waits for no one, and in its dance all are equal. Indeed, life is but a fleeting dance, and none can refuse when death, the ultimate partner, comes calling. A 15th century French poet, lost in contemplation amidst skeletal dancers, mused that, though life brings joy, none can delay their dance when the solemn notes of the piper finally sound. Imagine the scene beneath the cypress trees. Souls leap to the rhythm of death, each with a resigned grace as if drawn to their inevitable fate. The Dance of Death, with its haunting imagery, saw a decline in the 16th century as the gloom of medieval times gave way to the enlightening glow of the Renaissance. Yet like a persistent shadow, it returned in later periods, especially during the plague-ravaged 17th century and the death-obsessed Romantic era. Even in our modern times, the macabre dance persists, infiltrating our visual culture, from eerie Halloween decorations to the dark themes of heavy metal album art. This dance macabre, with its stark reminder of our mortality, has become a cultural artifact, a testament to a society that has stared death in the face and in doing so has sought to understand it. Through the strokes of art, the melodies of music, and the lines of poetry, medieval Europeans endeavored to reconcile with the great equalizer, the force that humbles kings and emperors alike. In the dance of death, we witness the eternal human struggle to accept the slumber that awaits us all. Despite its grimness, there's an oddly comforting aspect to the dance macabre. It portrays the fundamental equality and shared humanity of all, offering solace to those shadowed by death. Rich or poor, saintly or sinful, all are bound by the relentless grip of that final waltz into the eternal night. And so, having followed the morbid pirouettes and grim steps of this medieval dance, we return to our central theme, the enduring grip of folklore on the medieval European psyche. From fairies to witches, from werewolves to revenants, from monstrous births to ominous omens, these tales reflect a mind deeply entwined with the supernatural. In the tapestry of medieval existence, a rich array of wonders and horrors was interwoven, painting a vivid landscape of the human experience. These tales, both enchanting and terrifying, were not mere stories. They were the symbolic lexicon through which the medieval mind wrestled with the tumult of life in a treacherous era. Amidst the specters of famine, the scourge of disease, and the convulsions of religious upheaval, folklore served as a map to navigate the inexplicable events that punctuated their days. Imagine Walter Map with his satirical tales of demonic encounters, or Gervais of Tilbury meticulously cataloging a parade of marvels and monsters. These chroniclers were more than historians. They were guides through the labyrinthine depths of human fear and fascination. Their narratives, though often whimsical, unveiled the profound undercurrents that stirred the medieval soul. As the feudal system waned and rigid dogmas ossified, folklore morphed, adapting to reflect the shifting fears and aspirations of the time. From the whispered superstitions of peasants to the grandiose romances of the court tales of the eerie and otherworldly were a beacon illuminating the darkness that clung to the corners of their candlelit world. But what of our own time with its technological prowess and scientific enlightenment? Despite our advances, we find ourselves just as captivated by a chilling story as those medieval souls. Urban legends shared in hushed tones over digital screens and paranormal thrillers that adorn bookstore shelves continue to thrill and chill us. Why? Perhaps because, like the peasant listening intently by the hearth, we too sense the vast enigmatic universe beyond our grasp. The dark matter of the cosmos still evades our understanding, and the human heart remains an unexplored forest. In confronting the unknown, we connect with those ancient storytellers, realizing that at heart, we are not so different from those who once huddled around fires, seeking comfort and explanation in tales of the supernatural. As we delve into this rich tapestry of medieval myth and legend, let us reflect upon the timeless allure of folklore. These ancient tales, which once sent shivers through the spines of both serfs and sovereigns, continue to grip our contemporary consciousness with an eerie fascination. They serve as a poignant reminder that despite our sophisticated knowledge, we inhabit a world still teeming with wonders and terrors, where, as Hamlet so eloquently put it, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy. May the monstrous, the marvelous, and the macabre forever linger at the periphery of our collective imagination, beckoning us to explore the shadows just beyond the firelight. Is it not the true enchantment of folklore that it has the power to captivate and disturb us regardless of the era? It transports us, if only for a fleeting, spine-tingling moment, back to those medieval nights where we become listeners once more huddled around the crackling flames, our ears pricked for the devilish whispers drifting on the night air. And thus, dear listener, as we close this chapter, may your dreams be gentle and undisturbed by the capering skeletons and famished spirits of the haunted medieval nights. Sleep peacefully knowing that, as one medieval jester once quipped, be we king or peasant, soon or late, we all join death's dance. As we journey further into the eerie expanse of medieval folklore, we confront some of the most feared and fantastical beings of the time, the werewolves and wild men believed to roam the dark forests of Europe. To the medieval mind, no creature inspired as much fear as the werewolf, a soul cursed to metamorphose into a voracious wolf or wolf-like entity. Tales abounded of humans, often through some. In the shadow depths of history, tales of diabolical pacts and curses whisper through the annals, speaking of ordinary souls transformed into monstrous lupine horrors that wreaked havoc upon villages and feasted on the flesh of livestock. Imagine, if you will, the heart-pounding encounter of a lone priest, as chronicled by the 12th century scribe William of Malmesbury, who stumbled upon a chilling scene in a secluded forest. There, a man and woman, their eyes reflecting both sorrow and savagery, confessed their grim fate. They were compelled to roam the earth as wolves, a penance for sins long past. Ah, what a terrifying mirror these werewolves held up to society, revealing the lurking beast within each soul, ready to unleash chaos and turn against its own. But werewolves were not the sole phantoms to chill the spine in those bygone days. Beyond the comforting glow of human hearths, the untamed wilds harbored tribes of wild men, creatures of the earth covered in thick, shaggy hair and dwelling in the dark, echoing caves. These beings, straddling the line between man and beast, were often viewed with a mixture of awe and dread. Sometimes they were seen as gentle, albeit simple denizens of the forest, a testament to nature's raw beauty. Yet other narratives cast them in a more sinister light, ferocious, almost inhuman, and with a voracious appetite for the unfortunate traveler who strayed too far from the safety of civilization. These wild men, along with their lupine counterparts, were not just figments of imagination, but were symbols deeply woven into the fabric of medieval fears and morals. They embodied the duality of human nature, werewolves, the internal struggle against one's darker impulses, and wild men, the ultimate surrender to primal instincts. What a profound lesson these stories imparted, urging the listener to contemplate the wild, untamed forces that might reside within each of us, waiting for the moment to break free. Ah, the struggle to master one's primal urges, to cultivate the wild within, through unwavering dedication and adherence to the cultural tapestries that bind us. At the core of this belief system lay the profound understanding that humanity, as an exquisite fusion of corporeal and ethereal essences, navigates between the mundane and the divine. To surrender entirely to our basest instincts. Oh, what a fall from grace, a descent into the subhuman in the eyes of the Almighty. And what could serve as a more potent emblem of the necessity for unceasing spiritual watchfulness than the ghastly sight of a werewolf, untamed and fearsome, or a wild man, brutish and uncontrolled? Yet, as terrifying as these creatures of the wild were, medieval lore whispered of threats far more insidious lurking not in the shadows of the forest, but within the very sanctity of home and hearth. Witches with their dark arts were believed to weave their spells of curses and corruption. A creeping paranoia took root as the simplest of misfortunes. Barren-filled, sickly livestock. Mysterious ailments were increasingly attributed to the clandestine machinations of these dark practitioners. Who were these supposed followers of the devil? What sinister powers did they command? These questions delve into the heart of medieval fears about evil in its most human form. As the medieval world wrestled with the specter of witchcraft, one man's pen would carve deep into the collective psyche, fanning the flames of witch hunts that were yet to come. Johannes Nider, a 15th century German theologian and Dominican friar, crafted an explosive treatise on witches known as the Formicarius, or the Ant Hill. Born in the Swabian town of Isneum, Allgäu, around 1380, Nider's life was a testament to his early calling. As a young man, he embraced the Dominican order and delved into theology at the prestigious universities of Vienna and Cologne, bastions of learning in the Holy Roman Empire. His intellect and oratory prowess soon set him apart. Serving as Prior Nider's influence was not just in his scholarly contributions, but in his ability to ignite the passions of his listeners, guiding them through the treacherous landscapes of human morality with the light of his erudition. Amidst the grand councils and echoing halls of Dominican monasteries, where church leaders grappled with the festering sores of Christendom, Johann Nieder emerged as a figure of influence at the Council of Basel in the 1430s. It was in this era of spiritual and political turmoil that Nieder, with a heart heavy with the burden of truth, embarked on a monumental task. Around 1435, he began his seminal work, Formicarius, a dialogue between a wise theologian and an eager student exploring the dark underbelly of sin, heresy, and diabolical machinations. But it was in the fifth and final book of Formicarius where Nieder poured out his soul, detailing the malevolent arts of witches with such vividness that it would sear itself into the collective memory of Europe. Oh, the tales he spun! Witches, he claimed, soared through the moonlit skies to partake in orgies of depravity, their laughter mingling with the cries of demons as they trampled the earth's bounty. Imagine, if you will, the horror of a mother discovering her child had vanished, only to learn that witches had not only stolen but feasted upon the innocence of youth. Nieder, with a mix of fascination and revulsion, described how these sorceresses could, through dark arts, render men impotent, either by taking their manhood or through sheer illusion. Was it not terrifying to think that these women, these witches, had entered into a vile covenant with Satan himself in return for their souls? In unholy service, the devil bestowed upon them powers to wreak havoc. This pact, this unholy alliance, became the cornerstone of the witch archetype in European lore. Nieder, in his quest for truth, drew upon the grim testimonies of an inquisitor named Benedict from the Savoy region of France. Under the cruel kiss of torture, the accused witches confessed to unspeakable acts implicating others in a web of darkness that seemed to stretch into every shadow. How chilling it must have been for the pious reader to feel the authenticity of Nieder's narrative, as if the very breath of the devil whispered through its pages. Though not the first to delve into the lore of witchcraft, Nieder's Formicarius solidified the image of the witch in the European psyche, a figure of dread and fascination forever entwined with the dark forces of the night. In the shadowy quarters of history, the narrative of early modern witch hunts was fueled by tropes and stereotypes that painted a chilling picture of malevolence. Johannes Nieder, with his fervent pen, crafted an image of the witch as a nefarious servant of Satan, imbued with dark, infernal powers, capable of wreaking havoc upon the virtuous. Imagine the terror that gripped the hearts of the faithful, knowing that the minions of the devil lurked among them, ever poised to lead souls astray. No measure, no matter how extreme, seemed too much in the desperate quest to eradicate these perceived threats. The Formicarius Nieder's manuscript not only circulated widely, but was also printed in 1475, a mere decade after Nieder's death, amplifying its reach and influence. Together with later works like the infamous Malleus Maleficarum, it positioned Dominican friars as zealous warriors in a crusade against what they saw as a burgeoning plague of witchcraft across Europe. Can you fathom the despair of those who caught in the crosshairs of this fervent rhetoric faced persecution? Women, particularly those marginalized by society, endured the brunt of this dark chapter in history. The morbid fascination with witches that made Formicarius a medieval bestseller would in the following centuries unleash untold suffering. Nieder, through his work, emerges not just as a moralist, but as a chronicler ensnared by visions of vice and malevolence. His witches were not mere mortals. They were grandiose villains capable of the most grotesque acts imaginable. Perhaps in his fervor, Formicarius reveals more about the anxieties and obsessions of the late medieval clerical mind than any tangible truth about heretics or witches. Yet it remains a pivotal text in the tapestry of European witchcraft history, its blend of theological argument and sensational tales defining the witch as the ultimate adversary to both God and man. As the medieval era plunged further into the abyss of superstition and paranoia surrounding witchcraft, the once clear boundaries between folklore and reality began to dissolve like morning mist. Tales once shared in the warm glow of the hearth now carried the weight of grim necessity as neighbors turned against one another in a desperate, frenzied search for Satan's minions. Amidst this chaos, the spirits of the restless dead roamed the fringes of the living world, a stark reminder of life's fragility in an age shadowed by death's relentless presence. Belief in ghosts and revenants' corpses that would rise from their graves to afflict the living was deeply ingrained in the fabric of medieval European society. The literature of the time brims with chilling accounts of spectral visitations and hauntings, each story a reflection of the profound anxiety about the thinning veil between life and the afterlife. Among these spectral entities, one of the most unsettling was the Draugr of Scandinavian lore. These undead guardians, which were thought to haunt their burial mounds, fiercely protecting the treasures they were buried with. But the Draugr were far from benign. They were known to unleash their wrath upon anyone audacious enough to disturb their eternal slumber. Consider, for instance, the Icelandic saga of Grettir the Strong. Here our hero faces a Draugr named Glommer, who even in death retained the brutal demeanor of his life as a shepherd. Glommer's spectral return transformed him into a towering, malevolent force, terrorizing the local farmstead. In a battle of epic proportions, Grettir grapples with this monstrous apparition, narrowly succeeding in severing its head and laying it to rest. Such narratives of the marauding undead encapsulate the very real fears of medieval Scandinavians, inhabitants of a land where the harshness of the wilderness mirrored the brutality of the afterlife, and where death was an ever-looming specter. The Draugr, with their unyielding guardianship over their graves, embodied not just the dangers of the wild, untamed landscapes, but also the terror of the unknown, lurking just beyond the edge of human understanding. Ah, to think of those dark, foreboding nights, where the line between the living and the dead was but a whisper, where every shadow could conceal a malevolent spirit ready to defend its earthly treasures. Beyond the comforting glow of the firelight, the shadows of Europe harbored tales of the revenant, a ghostly presence that took on an alarmingly physical form. In the 12th century, William of Newburgh penned a spine-chilling narrative about a revenant that haunted the English town of Berwick. Imagine the horror as the cadaver rising from its grave wandered the moonlit streets, its every step spreading a plague of fear and sickness among the townsfolk. Driven to desperation, the villagers, their nerves frayed and hope dwindling, unearthed the body and consigned it to flames, reducing it to mere ashes. Only then, with the nightmarish visits halted, did peace return to Berwick. This macabre ritual of exhuming and mutilating suspected revenants became a recurring, chilling theme in medieval folklore, echoing the deep-seated terror that the dead might rise to torment the living. Yet not all spectral encounters were so dire. Some narratives whispered of spirits who returned not to wreak havoc, but to seek closure or justice. The 12th century Danish historian Saxo Grammaticus tells of a murdered man who, in a dream, appeared to his friend, his voice laden with urgency, revealing where his bones lay hidden and demanding a proper burial. "Find me, lay me to rest," his spirit implored. Only when this solemn duty was fulfilled did the ghost find its eternal rest. These stories illuminate the medieval Christian reverence for proper burial rites and the sanctity of the dead. To die without absolution or to suffer the indignity of a neglected corpse was to court an eternity of unrest. The Church instilled the belief that the souls of the departed faced judgment, and the intercessions of the living could ease their journey through purgatory. This notion was most tenderly illustrated in the medieval tale of the Grateful Dead, where a living soul moved by compassion honors an unburied corpse, perhaps by settling its debts or ensuring its burial, and is later rewarded by the spirit's gratitude. In an era marked by crises, the tales of revenants stepping in to save the day paint a vivid picture of hope and connection. Imagine a knight down to his last coin, choosing to honor a dishonored corpse with a proper burial, only to find himself ensnared by a demon's grasp. In this moment of despair, the spirit of the buried rises not with vengeance, but with gratitude, rescuing the knight from certain doom. These macabre stories, with their dark allure, are not merely tales of horror, but are profound affirmations of the unbreakable link between the living and the departed. They whisper to us that acts of compassion and remembrance can transcend the veil of death, weaving a tapestry of connection that no grave can unravel. As the curtains of the Middle Ages began to fall, Europe was engulfed in the shadows of famine, war, and the harrowing grip of pestilence. The Black Death of the 14th century had not only decimated the population, but had left an indelible mark on the psyche of those who remained. Amidst this existential dread, a new artistic expression emerged, capturing the zeitgeist of an era teetering on the brink, the dance macabre, or the dance of death. This allegorical motif portrayed a chilling spectacle where all echelons of society, from the crowned heads to the humblest of folk, were inexorably drawn towards their final rest by the skeletal figures of death itself. These somber parades were immortalized on the walls of churches in the pages of books, serving as a poignant reminder of life's fleeting nature and the relentless march of mortality. One of the earliest and most celebrated manifestations of this theme can be found in the Parisian cemetery of Les Innocents, where between 1424 and 1425, a mural was painted sprawling across the walls. Here, a procession unfolds from the Pope to the peasant. Each living soul is paired with their grinning skeletal counterpart, a macabre doppelganger guiding them to their eternal slumber. The accompanying verses penned in Middle French drive home the message with a somber jest. You who pass by consider well how little you will be remembered after. Ah, what a sobering thought, and it beckons us to ponder our own legacy, our fleeting moments on this earth, and the dance we all must join. Embrace the notion of death and conduct your life in a manner that banishes fear from your heart. The dance of death, in an artistic phenomenon that swept across Europe like wildfire, became an instant sensation. It ignited the imaginations of countless artists, from the frescoes of Lübeck's Marienkirche to the intricate woodcuts of Hans Holbein, the younger spreading like a memento mori plague through the late medieval visual culture. But oh, the dance of death was far more than a mere fascination with the macabre. It served as a profound subversive commentary on the rigid social hierarchies that dominated medieval life. It was a leveling force, reducing all to mere skeletons, proclaiming with a chilling clarity, in death, all earthly distinctions crumble to dust. This message of equality resonated deeply in the aftermath of the Black Death, which had mercilessly claimed lives across the spectrum of society, from the wealthiest to the most impoverished. The plague had shattered the comforting illusion of stability and order, exposing the inherent fragility of human institutions. In those grinning skulls and dancing bones, survivors glimpsed their own vulnerability, a stark reminder that life is but a fleeting shadow with death as the great equalizer. Moreover, the dance of death spoke volumes to a populace increasingly disillusioned with the church. As successive waves of plague and warfare ravaged Europe, doubts crept in about the effectiveness of religious rites and the moral integrity of the clergy. The sight of skeletal figures leading popes and bishops to their graves was a biting critique, a stark suggestion that even the highest echelons were not above divine judgment. In its essence, the dance of death offered a grim solace to a society haunted by the specter of mass mortality. It acknowledged the inexorable truth of death's universality, while also casting a critical eye on the vanity of worldly pursuits. If every path leads to the grave, what then does it matter, the grandeur or the humility of the journey? Oh, the essence of life, how fleeting yet profound. Perhaps in truth, the only real purpose lies in embracing each fleeting moment, in cherishing the ephemeral splendor of existence while it graces us with its presence. 25, 22. As the tapestry of time unfurled from the medieval tapestry into the vibrant threads of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, the once dominant dance of death began to recede into the shadows of cultural memory. Yet its spirit persists immortalized in the vanitas themes of Baroque art, the brooding tales of Gothic literature during the Romantic period, and even the chilling narratives of contemporary horror cinema. Each time we face the ghostly visage of our own mortality, we engage in a ritual as old as those medieval macabre dancers themselves. How distant, one might think, are the eerie yarns and dark obsessions of medieval folklore from our enlightened, scientifically driven era. Yet beneath their fantastical veneer, these stories resonate with a timeless chord within the human soul, a curiosity for the unknown, a dread of the unseen, and an insatiable desire to decode life's enigmatic puzzles. 226:18. In the grotesque figures of monsters and witches, the spectral forms of ghosts, and the relentless march of the undead, we encounter mirrors of our own trepidations and yearnings, our relentless quest for meaning in a world that can seem whimsically harsh. Medieval folklore, born perhaps from superstition and a lack of knowledge, nonetheless bears witness to the boundless imagination of humanity, our ability to marvel and tremble before the mysteries that envelop us. 2:20:45. So as we surrender to the embrace of slumber, let us not forget those ancient storytellers gathered close around the dimming embers of the hearth, weaving tales of the eerie and the uncanny. In their narratives, might we not find echoes of our own deepest fears and darkest dreams, a poignant reminder that despite our advancements, we remain children of the night, ever haunted by the shadows that dance at the edge of the firelight. The late Middle Ages, a time when the very air was thick with suspicion and the shadows seemed to whisper of witchcraft and dark deeds. Witch trials, oh how they became a grim spectacle across the lands, as those in power sought to purge the world of those they deemed practitioners of the sinister arts. The methods they employed to discern guilt were nothing short of barbaric, a cruel dance between superstition and savagery. Consider the ordeal by water a test as chilling as the depths to which the accused were plunged. Stripped of dignity, bound tightly and cast into the watery abyss, the fate of these unfortunate souls was left to the whims of the elements. If the waters closed over her, swallowing her into their embrace, she was deemed innocent. Yet what a cruel twist of fate, for she might drown in proving her purity. But should she float buoyant upon the surface, her innocence was lost. The waters, they said, would reject the corruption within her. Pure water would shun the tainted soul, they exclaimed, as if the very nature of water could judge the heart of man. Yet the signs of witchcraft were not confined to the watery grave. Blemishes on the skin. Those everyday marks of humanity were now the devil's own signatures. Examiners with needles in hand would probe these marks. If no blood or pain ensued, it was seen as proof of the pact with darkness. And under the shadow of torture, confessions flowed like rivers, tales of broomstick flights, transformations into beasts, and midnight dalliances with demons emerged forced from lips that spoke not truth but terror. But in this world, teetering on the edge of hysteria, there existed another kind of magic, one that whispered of healing and hope. Folk healers, those wise women of the land, wove spells of protection and concocted brews from the earth's own bounty. Superstition still held sway, with villagers clutching talismans and hanging herbs to ward off the night's fears. Love potions and tokens of fortune were sought after a desperate grasp at the magic that might mend or mend hearts. Here in this tapestry of fear and faith, the lines between the light and dark arts blurred. An herbalist who might cure a nobleman's ailment with her gentle arts could be seen as a witch in the wrong light. What a world it was where magic could either heal or harm, where the intent behind the spell could mean the difference between life and death. Imagine a time when a wise healer known for her gentle touch and soothing remedies might be celebrated as a guardian angel, yet in the same breath a destitute woman whose only refuge was to mutter curses under her breath could be condemned as a vile sorceress. This dichotomy was starkly illustrated by Johannes Nider, a 15th century German theologian whose influence shaped the very fabric of witchcraft lore. Nider, a prominent figure in the Dominican order and a beacon of religious authority, left an indelible mark, not for his theological contributions, but for his chilling treatise on witchcraft, Formicarius, penned around 1437. This work, as vivid as it was terrifying, recounted tales of witchcraft so grotesque and dark they seemed plucked from the depths of nightmare. From witch hunters and those accused under duress, Nider gathered stories of covens where God's name was forsaken, crosses trampled, and allegiance sworn to Satan himself. How could one not shudder at the thought of witches as described by Nider soaring through the night sky on demonic steeds to attend their unholy Sabbaths? There they allegedly desecrated the sacred Eucharist and indulged in orgies with the devil acts so heinous they chilled the blood of any who heard of them. Nider's lurid accounts did more than just shock. They sculpted the archetype of the diabolical witch in the collective psyche. His Formicarius wove together centuries-old fears and accusations into a terrifying tapestry that painted witches not just as isolated miscreants, but as members of a sinister secret society bent on Christian downfall. This narrative, once released into the world, fanned the flames of hysteria, making witch hunting not just a practice, but a moral imperative. Can we not see the cruel irony? Nider's eager acceptance of confessions extracted through torture validated the brutal witch hunts, perpetuating a cycle of fear and persecution. His portrayal of witches as the devil's minions, engaged in unspeakable acts, stoked a moral panic that saw the supposed evildoers as a hidden threat within the very heart of Christian society. The legacy of Formicarius was to provide a theological and learned justification for the relentless pursuit and punishment of those accused of witchcraft. Its influence lingered long after Nider himself had cast a dark shadow over the pages of history. With the ominous death of 1438 still echoing through history, the concept of an expansive clandestine cult of witches seized the collective imagination. As this sinister notion took root, the Inquisition and secular courts pursued alleged witches with a fervor that only intensified in the following centuries. The witch trials that engulfed early modern Europe, culminating in the infamous Salem Panic of 1692, drew their chilling sustenance from fantastical narratives like those spun by Naders. But witches were not the sole supernatural specters to haunt the medieval psyche. The spirits of the departed, restless and vengeful, were believed to wander the earth, their baleful presence casting long shadows over the lives of the living. Tales of ghosts and revenants proliferated, sowing seeds of terror in hearts both high and humble. In the medieval Christian worldview, the dead were meant to lie in peaceful repose until the day of judgment, when the virtuous would rise to bask in eternal joy, while the malevolent would be cast into the fiery abyss. Any apparition, therefore, was viewed with suspicion, potentially an agent of the devil, or a soul denied the solace of heaven. Apparitions were more often harbingers of doom than comforting spirits. Especially spine-chilling were the tales of revenants, the reanimated corpses of the wicked, who, driven by demonic forces, crave human flesh and blood. Like a grotesque precursor to the modern zombie, these undead horrors would prowl the night, invading homes, terrorizing the slumbering. One particularly macabre account is provided by William of Newburgh, a 12th century English chronicler. In his Historia Rerum Anglicarum, he recounts a chilling incident that purportedly took place in the town of Berwick. Here, a man vile in life, and even more so in death, was buried only to rise again from his tomb, haunting the streets under the cover of darkness, his voice a sinister echo in the night. The saga continued as he called out the names of his neighbors. Those who heeded his eerie summons promptly fell ill, their lives snuffed out within 3 heartbeats of days. Night after night, this macabre ritual persisted until a band of valiant townsfolk, driven by desperation and courage, unearthed the revenant's resting place. To their horror, they found his corpse grotesquely swollen with fresh blood staining its shroud, a chilling testament to its unnatural life. With hooks, they dragged the body from its earthly prison, tore it asunder, and consigned its gruesome remnants to the cleansing flames, finally quelling the terror that had gripped their community. Such brutal rites, these acts of dismemberment, were believed to be the only certain way to confine a relentless revenant to its grave. William's tale, vivid and lurid, underscores the medieval era's macabre fascination with death and decay. In a world where disease ran rampant, famine was a frequent visitor, and violence was woven into the fabric of daily life, death loomed as an ever-present specter. With life expectancy barely reaching the 3rd decade, And even those who weathered the years, seldom seeing beyond 60, the rapid filling of cemeteries and the necessity of mass graves during times of plague or war painted a grim picture of existence. Enveloped by such relentless mortality, it's no surprise that the medieval imagination birthed nightmarish visions of the undead. Revenants and ghosts, these spectral figures embody the haunting fear that death might not be the end, but rather a grotesque continuation, a half-life where the deceased lingered in some twisted form. These entities, straddling the line between the natural and the supernatural, the living and the dead, captured the essence of an era where the boundary between life and afterlife was disturbingly blurred. This obsession with death reached its zenith in the late Middle Ages through the motif of the Dance of Death. Known also as the Dance Macabre, these chilling depictions showcase death itself, a skeleton, with a ghastly grin leading a motley crew of humanity kings alongside commoners, bishops, with beggars in a grim parade towards their inevitable end. In this dance, all were equal in the face of mortality. Death's eerie symphony played on its notes chillingly clear. This ghastly allegory served as a reminder of the inescapable fate that awaited us all, a universal equalizer that cared not for wealth or power. No matter how high one climbed in the societal ladder, death's cold fingers would eventually tap on everyone's shoulder, erasing all earthly distinctions. The Dance of Death, a somber memento mori, warned against becoming ensnared by the ephemeral joys of life. These haunting depictions, etched into the very fabric of churches and graveyards, showed skeletal figures frolicking across frescoes and carved into the cold stone. Woodcuts and illuminated manuscripts carried this grim ballet into homes, a constant whisper of life's delicate, fleeting nature. In an era where death was a frequent visitor, such art offered a way to face and process the deep-seated fears of mortality. Imagine the impact on the medieval psyche entering a dimly lit church to witness the fleshless figure of death leading a macabre parade of souls. How could one not feel the icy breath of inevitability? Yet even in the shadow of such existential dread, medieval folks found solace in humor. Manuscript margins brim with whimsical doodles of creatures playing instruments or performing acrobatics, infusing a touch of lightness into the heavy atmosphere. Death itself was not immune to mockery. Satirical epitaphs and parodic last wills lampooned the futility of earthly pursuits. This peculiar blend of the sacred and the profane, the terrifying and the comical, paints a vivid picture of medieval folklore's complex tapestry. Ah, the timeless allure of the medieval mind, where shadows dance with light in a mesmerizing ballet of fear and fascination. 3750. Within these stories of monsters and marvels of witches, weaving spells and walking corpses rising from their graves, we witness the human spirit wrestling with the profound enigmas of existence itself. Life versus death, the battle between good and evil. The medieval imagination, bold and unyielding, peered into the abyss of darkness and transformed it into spellbinding narratives and unforgettable imagery. Though the dragons and fairies of yore might now be mere whispers in the winds of myth, their essence continues to clutch at our collective psyche with an iron grip. 22. These primal fears and fantasies weave through our literature, paint our canvases, and invade our slumbering minds. When we delve into the Grimm Brothers' tales or shiver through a modern horror film, we are in fact drawing from the deep well of medieval folklore. And in times of turmoil or trepidation, don't we find ourselves clutching at ancient amulets, reciting age-old incantations? Consider the modern skyscrapers adorned with gargoyles, silent sentinels against malevolent forces, or the everyday rituals like knocking on wood or crossing our fingers. Do we not partake in these without truly pondering their origins? 50. Despite our advanced technology, are we so different from those superstitious souls of the medieval past? Perhaps not as much as we'd care to admit. In essence, the enduring enchantment of medieval folklore lies in its dual capacity to both captivate and unsettle us. 21. These peculiar, often chilling tales remind us of the lurking darkness at the fringes of our reality, while simultaneously exalting the boundless power of our imagination. They beckon us into a realm that feels both alien and intimately known, teaching us invaluable lessons about the complexities of human emotion and the endless wonders of the human heart. 39:50. As we reach the final chapter of our enchanting voyage through the shadowy realms of medieval folklore, let us reflect on the tapestry of tales we've woven together. I trust that this nighttime adventure has not only delighted, but also transported you to a bygone era where fantasy and reality danced in twilight. Have your dreams been touched by the magic we've explored? If this gentle journey through history's dark corners has brought you comfort, why not bestow a kind gesture by giving this video a soft approval with your thumbs, and perhaps let the subscribe button beckon you to more serene explorations? Here's to hoping your rest is untroubled by the mischievous sprites or the hungry ghosts of old. Until our paths cross again, may you sleep in peace. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Your comments, likes, shares, and subscriptions are the stars that guide our way. Sweet dreams, dear viewers.